Story 1. My 24M girlfriend 24F is unusually buying new bras and panties. Over the last 2.5 weeks, my GF has bought close to 9 new pairs of lingerie. This is unusual because she bought some 7 new pairs somewhere at the beginning of April. Now, I don't mind a girl buying new lingerie, but this is unusual. She had close to 40 new pairs of lingerie, a count which keeps on decreasing every other day. Now, I take out trash every given day, and I've observed that she hasn't thrown her old lingerie in trash over the past 1 week. While there's no trace of it anywhere in our apartment, and yet she is missing 4-5 pairs from our common closet. She seems to act pretty normal. There's no dent in her daily routine, but it boggles me why she is on this lingerie shopping spree. It's not like she is amassing a stockpile of lingerie. Her lingerie count is somewhat unchanged from the time before this madness. I couldn't find trace of her old lingerie. Am I being paranoid? Am I missing something here feminine that's otherwise normal? Should I ask her anything about it? TLDR. GF buying new lingerie every few days, while leaving no trace where she threw her old ones. Update. I might ask her while we drive down to the train station in the next 30 minutes. We'll keep you guys posted. Update 2. Alright, I chatted with her while driving. I started off by asking her directly, as /fight_Maximus suggested. She said something like she hasn't been feeling good about her underwear fitting old and new while at work. So, she has taken a new vow. If she finds any underwear incredibly uncomfortable, she will throw it off immediately. I asked her, I haven't noticed any in our trash, maintaining my casual tone, and she said since we spend most of our daytime at work, she disposes it off in her workplace bin and carries a pair of change underwear, like most women do. I even said to her jokingly, "Oh, I was worried you were sealing your undies on eBay or something," just to get some kind of an answer, and she ignored my remark. Do women do that at work or get rid of their old undies when they find it uncomfortable like this? I could really use your insight on this, TBH. We moved together at the beginning of this year, and this is the first time I've moved in with a girl in a relationship. I don't know what else I could do, since she has made it clear she drops it off in work trash and has shown no intention/fetish to sell it online. But overall, I tried to make this conversation as just out of curiosity as I could. Update 3. This is way too overwhelming. I am heading back home and taking a day off. I know I might be overreacting, but somehow it just doesn't sound right, the conversation we had an hour ago. Might talk to her again during her lunch break. Update 4. Seriously guys, thank you. I've been glued to my phone all morning long, except driving back home. Took me a lot of self-control. Items. There were 6 receipts in total. 2 from Victoria's Secret and 3 from Target, and 1 from Macy's. Against my rough counting, she had amassed some 28 to 30 pairs of new lingerie, including the one at the beginning of April. 2 of these receipts had Karen's name on it, my GF's elder sister. I believe Karen has some kind of rewards card from VS that itself accounts for 40% of her new purchases till now. I thought she had probably purchased 15 pairs, give or take. I don't want to invade her privacy by sneaking her bank statements, because that would be a bit over the line. I cannot believe that she spent $1,100 plus on lingerie over past 45 days. That by itself is so effing unusual. It's also odd that she hasn't paid using our red card at Target. We have Target app on our phones. I am calling my brother over to get some clarity. I don't know if it would be right to log in her laptop and see her browse history to confirm if she's selling her underwear online. I am just numbed ATM. Update 5. I spoke to my brother and saw some of your comments. I've decided to confront her in person when she's back home. I don't want to take any chances or let any form of miscommunication trigger chain reactions for questions that might be unwarranted to her. Update 6. You know you have one of those days when all the hell breaks loose, and this was one for me. I skipped lunch break phone call in hopes I can talk to my GF when she gets back home. Spoke to Karen and her mom in the meantime, to ensure if she isn't in some kind of financial mess or other kind of trouble. But it takes one effing truth to destroy it all, you guys. My GF saw this post at work and she immediately knew it was me posting it here. I didn't realize this. Leaving rest of her day off. Some 4 hours ago, My GF confessed that she was sleeping with some guy she met at her work gym since the beginning of March. To me, she met this guy at her work gym some 8 months ago. This guy is not even from her workplace. He works at this other startup in a different building of this corporate park. She said things got all heated up late February after one afternoon outing. Though she stopped going to gym owing to her hectic schedule after her promotion late November. But there she was, going to gym all along from the day she started sleeping with this guy. She told her coworkers she has switched gyms across the street. I haven't even cared to ask where they did it. The missing underwear. This is so messed up, sick. She had this realization midway in March that this was wrong. I don't know why I never saw this side of her. But she began buying new underwear and throwing it off as some effing guilt ritual. She said she couldn't get off that guilt of wearing the same underwear in bed with me as she worn hours earlier sleeping with that MF. Do you know how disgusting that feels? Who effing throws underwear because you want to dust off guilt from having it worn during sex with a guy you've met and barely known? I was stand still, but I held up for the moment. She says she was confused and that she has backed away from this guy's advances since past 1 week. I don't believe any word of it. In fact, I don't think I want to believe what she said. Also, the tossing her underwear at workplace was an excuse, yes. Because back then I was driving and she didn't know how to react or what to say, so she made that excuse up, and here I was worrying whole day what it could be. I later called Karen because we were both emotionally drained. I didn't even wait a bit after she arrived. Even Karen was shocked by the ramble. She later called me because I had already left them in our apartment. Took me a while to get my thinking right and call my brother. I'll be crashing at his house for now. Honestly, I don't even want to see her face. Ever. How can someone lie so perfectly? How can someone be so cold that they show no emotional change or discomfort when sleeping with 2 people? WTF. She slept with me hours after she slept with that idiot, and throwing underwear was her means to get over that guilt? I don't understand her anymore. When she said it was all carnal, I didn't even know she believed in notion of sleeping around with people for physical needs. She said she still loves me and this was just something that made her feel good. I don't even know what to interpret of that. Honestly, I think my thoughts are all over the place, but thank you. I don't know if I could have known about this if it wasn't for this post. It was after dinner did I realize that that was trending on this sub, and this post made her take the midday train back home. I have so many questions. Part of me wants to see her again just to make sure she is all right. Part of me doesn't want to see her ever again. I have so many questions, but I just avoided her by walking downstairs in no time. I had to ask my brother and his wife to pick some stuff off from home. This is all messed up. Update 7. 24M24F. I owe this sub a lot. I have taken sick leave today. I just wanted to say a huge thanks to people who have commented to my post from yesterday. I wanted to let you guys know that I have read each and every comment up until late last night. If it wasn't for your awesome responses, I would have never even dared to ask her about her behavior in first place. Or she would have never come back home early to confront me about this after viewing the post on Reddit. I was able to get some sleep, yes. I'm at my brother's place, while she is staying with Karen, who is her sister, by the way. Karen reached out to me late last night and asked if we could meet early morning at a coffee shop and chat. So I did. We talked a lot about what happened yesterday, since she partly confided in Karen about why she did what she did. Here are some key takeaways. She doesn't know why she began sleeping with this guy in first place. It just happened. She feels terribly sorry for what she did to me and hopes we can work things out. She has already broken up with that guy a week ago. She felt it was wrong and there's no excuse for it. She asked Karen to buy stuff from VS using Karen's CC because she felt it would be awkward to explain it to me if we were to review her finances. We used to do that together to cut her expenses and pay up aggressively towards her student loans. She claimed that sex with this guy was completely carnal and that there were no feelings or affection involved. She said she got lured by this because her new responsibilities were way too overwhelming for her. But again, she maintained that she didn't know why she started sleeping with this guy in first place. I don't think I want to know who this guy is or whether it was him or her who made the first move. Thinking about it is so effing depressive. I should have noticed how she was able to maintain her body in spite quitting gym late last year. That being said, I still don't understand what must have made her impulsively sleep with that guy and jeopardize our relationship in first place. I think I'm going to eventually weigh in those reasons before I decide as to what to do next. I have been trying to assess if I could have picked up any cues that are otherwise typical to a cheater, and it's so strange that she hadn't had any of those characteristics. I mean, the fact that she confessed she was able to convince her coworkers that she goes to gym across the street instead of using the free gym at her workplace by itself is so infuriating. I don't think I would have ever doubted her cheating on me because you don't see those cliches, staying late after work or texting someone constantly, symptoms when she was around at home. I think if I try to understand what made her to get in bed with this guy, I'll just get myself deeper down the rabbit hole. Karen also said that even she couldn't truly understand what was going in her head when she decided to have this fling with a completely unknown guy and put our relationship at stake. Though Karen did make a full disclosure that my GF once cheated on a guy as a teenager back in high school, and things turned out ugly back then. I was a bit surprised since I didn't know this before. We both knew our relationship and our dating history midway in our relationship, but not this. That was quite a long time ago, and by the way, Karen is a sweet lady. She even wrote each of us a letter before we guys moved in together. This is so ironic. I lurk on Reddit via my main account to get updates on r/Slapple and r/Slmos, while my GF used to thoroughly read r/Took chromosomes. She would sometimes read out a post here and there, asking me what do I think about some post on Reddit from a guy's perspective, entailing into one of those small talks. Little did I know that our life would be one of those relationship questions, to be a topic for small talk amongst other Redditors or couples here online. Nonetheless, I truly appreciated your responses. I would have dragged this thing for days, or even weeks, getting more and more worried and obsessed about my GF's behavior. See, when you move in together, no one ever tells you what boundaries to set and what things to avoid. I think I made a mistake there. Maybe I should have checked on her time and again, to see if something had been bothering her at work. I think first time living with someone that aren't your parents or drunk dudes back from college is always awkward and wonderful at the same time. Don't take it as an advice, but as a takeaway from my ill-fated experience. Just ask your so time and again if he or she has anything to share that's bothering him or her. I know this sounds like a dumb thing to ask, but when you are new in a relationship or have leveled up your relationship status, we tend to worry more about getting the dynamics of relationship or new arrangement right instead of worrying about feelings of that person. I expected that we might get bored of each other one fine day, as we grew older, and I might end up buying candles at Target to spice things up. But not this. When she was drained back from work after her promotion before we moved in, I seriously thought it would be better if I give her own time and not bring work talk during dinners or when we hung out together. Little did I realize that this could have made her look for comfort elsewhere. I can also affirm that I have been around her as long as she needed me, but I guess we were both busy complimenting each other in our apartment by who gets to do what to upkeep of our surroundings, groceries, social responsibilities, instead of just being in moment and listen to one another. I just picked up my car and got off from my meeting with Karen at coffee shop. I have the remainder of this weekend all to myself. While my brother and his wife have been incredibly supportive, I thought of getting myself checked into the first available counselor, even if that's just one time. I haven't told any of my friends or coworkers about it, so it's going to be social life as usual, unless I come to a decision as to what to do next. It's like you were effing pissed off for having your trust shattered, but then you have need to walk through those broken pieces to get out of it without getting yourself hurt. So now our apartment stays deserted, while I figure out what to do next. Sorry for the ramble, but thank you again. Edit. By no means I feel exactly the same for her like I did yesterday or while typing this post. I thought I still cared for her last night, but that gradually got replaced with rage and nausea, even when I think about her. Don't worry, I'll be fine as time goes by. I have just confirmed appointment with a counselor in my PCP to get myself checked for anything fishy. The intent of this post was just to show deep gratitude for responses yesterday and today, as it seems to any guy/gal reading this post in future teetering between what to do next when you found out you were cheated by your GF/BF. Read some of the comments down below. They might turn out to be truly insightful for you. And my counselor had already read my previous post before I had even checked into her office late afternoon yesterday. She referred to me as, "You are the guy who posted about his GF's lingerie behavior, right?" Few minutes into our session. Man, it seems everyone on Reddit likes to lurk on this sub. I'm okay though, feeling better, just a bit insomniac. And regarding our home, I spoke to the leasing office and they said under the circumstances, I can terminate the lease and pay rent until they find a new occupant. I think I'll be fine from a financial standpoint. I've been living frugally and saved for a while. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My wife wanted a divorce after I missed our anniversary to help my mother with a fake emergency. But then my mom started sending me inappropriate photos until she had a mental breakdown. I'm 36M and my wife is 28F. We've been married for 4 years, together for 6, and have a 1-year-old daughter who is the light of my life. My wife is an amazing mother and partner. My own mother, on the other hand, is absolutely ridiculous, and my wife has made me realize over time that my relationship with her is not healthy. My mom tries to control everything, including our wedding, which I convinced my wife to suck it up and go with my mom's idea. She is still resentful of me for it. Passive-aggressive behavior on my mother's part basically since we started dating has made my wife absolutely hate her. I'll admit I haven't been as firm with my mom as I should have been in the past. This brings us to yesterday. Our wedding anniversary was last night. We're a little tight on money right now, being new parents, and our jobs are not fantastic, so I suggested that a family friend watch our daughter. I buy us a nice bottle of wine, and we cook dinner and just relax. I could tell my wife was disappointed that we couldn't do anything bigger or better, but she agreed this was the best choice, and we settled to both be home from work at 6 p.m. I was headed home from work when I got a call from my mother asking me to come over because it was an emergency. I asked her what type of emergency it was, and she just started crying frantically and begging me to come over. It was already 5:30 p.m., but I live in a low-volume traffic area, so I figured I would stop by and calm my mom down before I met my wife. When I got to my mother's house, she was literally sitting on the couch having a glass of wine and watching TV. I was livid. She was so calm too, not the frantic monster I was speaking to on the phone. I started pressing about what the emergency was and reminded her that this was the night of my wedding anniversary, and she said she had some house tasks for me to do that, in my opinion, she was 100% capable of doing herself. Things like washing the dishes, watering her houseplants, cleaning the gutters, etc. So, definitely not emergency material. But she guilted me into doing them. She was literally screaming to me at one point that I was a bad son. I texted my wife letting her know that I was going to be late because I was at my mom's house. She didn't respond to my text. Before I knew it, it was 7:30 p.m. My mom kept trying to put more tasks on me, but I put my foot down and let her know that I needed to get home. When I finally got home to my wife, she wasn't there. I was worried, so I texted and called her many times. No response. I was able to track her phone and found out that she was at her parents' house. They don't live far, around 20 minutes away. She finally got back at 11 p.m. and as I greeted her with a glass of champagne, she told me to save it for myself because she wanted a divorce. I was shocked and started breaking down. I asked her why and she said that tonight was the final straw in a long list of things. That I've always put my mother first. She said that she expected today, of all days, to be our one time together. But even my mom is able to intervene on our wedding anniversary. I asked her what I could do, begged her to go to counseling. She is refusing. I asked her if there is someone else. She said that someone else is herself, and that it's time for her to start working on herself and stop worrying about me being able to put my mother first. She has since moved into the guest bedroom at our house and hasn't talked to me much. This morning, I tried to kiss her on the way out to drop off our daughter before work, and she just moved out of my way. So, how do I save this sinking ship? I'm committed to doing everything for my wife to improve this, but she says that this is past fixing. I'm at a complete loss. I'm worried that she will see, or already has seen, a divorce lawyer, and I'd like to stop this in its tracks before it goes too far. I flared this as "give it to me straight," because I just need people to be as honest as possible with me right now. I know I messed up, but I also need to know how to fix this. Update 1. I was able to give a small update at the end, but I thought I'd give a larger one here. First, I just want to say thanks for everyone who took the time to respond. Some of the responses were brutally honest, but I did tag the flare as "give it to me straight," so that makes sense. 1. Some people were commenting that me asking if there was somebody else that my wife was seeing was inappropriate. I really don't see how it was inappropriate, but to each their own, and my wife definitely thought it was inappropriate too, and was one of the tipping point comments that made her move into the guest room. I know I said I'd give her space, but the conflict was killing me. So, yesterday when she got back from work, I knocked on the guest room door and tried to get her to come down to the kitchen to talk to me, but she was still refusing to talk about all of this until she was ready. I asked her when she'd be ready and she just shut the door in my face. 2. Late last night my mom showed up unannounced, which is unfortunately something she does, and my wife answered the door. I could hear my mom asking my wife how our anniversary was. My wife called for me to come down and handle my mom, her exact words, and my mom started interrogating her as to what handle means. By the time I got down there ready to defuse the situation, it was already too late. My wife had poked the bear, and my mom was laying the verbal smackdown. I asked my wife what she said to my mom, stupid, I know, and she just went up to the guest room and slammed the door. I finally realized what was going on and asked my mom to leave, but she was refusing. I had to threaten to call the police and then she finally left. 3. This morning my wife packed her bags, a bag for my daughter, and left for her parents' house. I was surprised that she didn't even tell me beforehand. I was able to stop her and ask her what was going on as she was headed out of the door, and she said she's had enough of the verbal abuse, that she's ready to find a partner that will stick up for her and her family. She said that I will always put my mother first, and last night was an example of that this relationship cannot be salvaged, and she will be seeing a divorce lawyer ASAP. As a last-ditch effort, I asked her what I could do to fix this. She just shook her head at me and then she left. I'm a mess. I've lost everything meaningful to me within the span of 48 hours. I keep calling and texting her and getting no response back. I called one of my buddies to tell him what went down and he's on his way now. When I told him what had all happened, his reaction was a mix of shocked and, congratulations, you played yourself. He called me denser than a block of bricks. I told him that I still have some hope that this relationship can last, and he laughed and said I need to put that idea to rest. I know I've got things I need to work on. Boundaries for sure, my relationship with my mother, who I am working on blocking on literally every avenue of communication that I have. Myself. To be completely honest, I'm not a big believer in therapy, but I know that I need it and I'm hoping it will make me a better person, and maybe if my wife sees me working on myself, then there's some hope. As for my marriage, there's a part of me that's still optimistic, but I know it will be hard for my wife to come back from this. As painful as it is for me, I need to just play the next couple of days, weeks, months by ear and just see what happens. Update 2. Hello, it's me again. This will probably be the last time I post on here. My wife has officially collected all of her things and my daughter's things and moved back in with her parents. I did the dumbest move ever and stayed with my mom for a few days to collect my thoughts. It was dumb on a lot of levels, but I finally saw firsthand the abuse that my wife was receiving because now it was directed entirely at me. She also did some really weird things like try to snuggle me to sleep one night. I woke up and she was snuggling me. I had to tell her to get back to her own bed. I realized how counterintuitive it was for me to be there, so I moved out one morning when she was sleeping and came back to my home. I went back through some responses on my first post and finally began to follow the advice. I've officially blocked my mother on everything and invested in a small home security system for my house. She's tried to show up a few times, but I've locked all of our gates and she does not have a key. I also reinforced the doors in our home just in case. I've had 2 therapy sessions and I stupidly thought it would be just a one-and-done type thing. In my first one, I was given some really good advice and was told that if I'm just here to save my marriage, then I look elsewhere because I also need a lot of work. That really got me thinking. My therapist is fantastic, too. As for my marriage, I don't know what's next. We are going through a trial separation at the moment, and she hasn't spoken to me much except to talk about our daughter. I'm also realizing that I may have been a bad husband, but I can still be a good father to my daughter. It's still tough. I feel immense guilt over everything that happened, but not just to my wife, to my mom too. It will take me a while to get her feelings out of my head and disentangle her from my life, but I'll admit I'm excited for this fresh start. If it doesn't work out with my wife, I can still be the best dad that I can be. Thanks for the help, guys. I really appreciate it. Edit. The amount of hateful comments I've gotten in my inbox about how I'm a leech, how my wife was an idiot for getting with me in the first place, and how I'm a garbage person is exactly why I didn't want to post here again in the first place. Update 3. Hi there, me again. What the hell are grandparents' rights and why is my mother hinting at them? I don't know if this is more of a legal advice scenario, but the background at this point in time is that since I've cut off my mother from all avenues, she's decided to send snail mail to both me and my wife, with whom I am currently going through a trial separation. The return address was my mother's house and the handwriting was hers. My wife and I decided to meet up to discuss the letters, and she and I both received different ones. Not going to go into details of mine because it was mostly come home to mama type crap, but my wife's letter came in a large envelope that was mostly unmarked, no postage on it, and no evidence of it going through the post office, so she must have dropped it off herself. My wife is staying with her parents and my mom knows the address through family gatherings, holidays, etc., but the handwriting matched and she still wrote a return address on it. The letter itself included information about how my mom was thinking of pursuing grandparents' rights, but if that's not far enough, she'll have to get creative in order to spend time with our daughter. As for the grandparents' rights thing, my daughter is too young to have any type of serious relationship with my mom, but she has watched her on some occasions. My wife refused to let my mom have unsupervised visits when we were still together, but she would have some supervised play. As for the creative thing, I'm not entirely sure what to think. It doesn't sound like a total threat to me, but it does sound super ominous. My wife is freaked out. I let her know that I'd support her in any way possible, but we honestly don't know where to go from here. Restraining order? Cease and desist letter? Should we just document that we got this in order to keep a paper trail, but ignore the letter? I personally think we need to document this to the police. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 4. Thanks everyone for your help from the other day. I've blocked my mom on all communication and so has my wife. We can also confidently say we've got everything on lock from my in-laws' house, to our pediatrician, to my daughter's social security number. As for the threat, we are following through with the legal proceedings with a lawyer following my mother's threat. But my wife, daughter, and I are doing okay and just taking it day by day. I guess at the moment, I'm preparing for the worst for my mom. This morning, she attempted to see my wife at work. Literally just showed up and asked to see my wife. When my wife's secretary refused, my mother demanded to see her and it got bad enough that they threatened to call the police. We are documenting everything and also looking into moving, too. The space from my mother would be good. I'm worried she will come to my work next, but I have told my boss about the situation and he's pretty understanding. I guess as understanding as a boss can be. In the meantime, is there anything else I should do? A kind Redditor recommended we get the house CPS ready, and we are in the process of doing that. Better to be safe than sorry. Thanks again. It might have been a rough go-around in the beginning, but I'm starting to see the light. My mother may have come between my marriage, but I refuse to let her hurt my family any further, especially since she has threatened taking my daughter away. Update 5. Hi everyone, this will likely be my last post for the next few weeks. Nothing is wrong, but we're preparing for my wife's birthday and since I messed up the anniversary, I really want to do something special. Plus, with Halloween close by, my wife and I are getting our daughter's costume ready, decorating the house, and generally just trying to do some festive fall things. I'm finding that I'm enjoying this time with my family a lot without the interference of my mother. This is how it always should have been, but my mother almost always finds a way to work her way into what we are doing. Although we have remained no contact, she's starting to find ways to circumvent that, hence the story below. So, I'm sure I'll have more updates. Here's my next question. My mom hasn't always acted sexual towards me, but my therapist has picked up on a few red flags that started in my teens and have carried into me being a man. The first one being the fact that my mom was snuggling me in bed when I moved in with her for a short amount of time. The second is that she can be touchy-feely with me in a way that I used to think was normal mother/son love, but now I know is weird. Playing with my hair excessively, kissing my cheeks, you get the point. One time she pinched my butt when she came and visited my daughter and told me to give her a piece of that sugar. At our wedding, she wore an extremely revealing dress, at least it wasn't white, and tried to get me to dance suggestively with her on the dance floor. I thankfully realized what was going on and did not go for it. I'm rambling at this point, but what I'm trying to say is that she did something not too long ago that takes the cake. While I was at work, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize and it got tagged as an external server. We use Outlook. which isn't unusual since sometimes people will email and call to ask about our services. Plus, the subject line of the email said inquiry, and I could see a bit of the body copy asking about the types of services we offer. Well, to my surprise, this was a bait and switch. I opened the email to see the body copy, but underneath of it, there were about 4 pictures of my mother topless with a caption under each of them that said, "Where's my sweet boy?" This was definitely an email from my mom. I don't get sick often, but I started shaking and then had to go to the bathroom to throw up. Why on earth would she think this was acceptable is something I'll never figure out. But it began to register to me that she had just sent me a topless photo through my work computer and also through my work's internet. I'm thinking this was likely done on purpose to get me in trouble anyway. I forwarded the email directly to our lawyer and blocked the new email address from my work and personal email. I then went to talk to my boss about it. He knows about my mom and her antics, and he said that he received an email from the same address regarding me being unprofessional on-site a few days ago. So yeah, I think this is a setup. My boss thankfully is understanding of the situation, or I guess as understanding as a boss could be, and just deleted the email from my mom and let me get back to work. Did I do the right thing here? Also, I'm worried that my mom is having some sort of mental break, not worried for her but for myself, my wife, and my daughter. My therapist calls it escalation. If I got nude photos, I can't even imagine what's next. Is it time to call Adult Protective Services? Any advice would be appreciated. Update 6. My wife's birthday is this weekend, so we are about to go off the grid. Thought I'd update you all on the situation before we hightail it to nature. Nothing crazy has happened thankfully besides a few unmarked letters in the mail to both me and my wife, which we have made photocopies of for our personal records and then sent them straight to the lawyer. Also, after speaking with my boss about the photos that were sent to me from her, I have also decided to go the police route with the awful photos that my mother sent me. Still no grandparents' rights papers yet, thankfully. Again, not sure if it will ever happen, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Some people have recommended that we get our house CPS ready just in case. We've got that handled in case it ever gets to that. We are still absolutely no contact with my mother, regardless of her attempts to get in contact with us. Lastly, we are serious about moving and are considering viewing homes and apartments next week. However, my wife is still adamant that she does not want to jump ahead and assume we will stay together after this boils over. If we purchase or rent together and then decide to divorce or legally separate, that would bind us to a living situation that I don't think would be good for anyone involved, including our daughter. I respect her decision, and although it's not ideal, I agree that we need to maybe let this settle and revisit the trial separation at a later date. So things are slowing down a bit. I'm happy that things are returning to a bit of normal. It's still a rough road, and I'm working on myself and my family every day. Update 7. Basically the title. Still no contact with my mom. Still not answering any of her attempted communication. It's not confirmed, but my wife has a hunch that now mom is trying to confront us in a public place, like when we go out shopping. It happened 3 times over the past 2 weeks, and at first we thought it was incidental, but since it's happened twice more, we are a little concerned. An example. We go to a nearby grocery store that's close to our home but farther away from where she lives. I'd say it's about 25 to 30 minutes from her home and also not the closest grocery place for her. Wednesday is our grocery shopping day since we both get off from work a little bit early. My mom knows this, as sometimes she would request for me to get her something and I'd go out to her house and bring groceries to her. I know, my mom is fully able to go grocery shopping herself. I thought I was being a good son. Now I know it was manipulative. 2 days ago, we arrive at said grocery store and find my mom pacing around outside looking like a crazy person. We decided to turn around and go to another grocery store. Again, I'm not a detective, but this seems suspicious to my wife and is starting to seem suspicious to me, too. Are we overreacting here? A small part of me thinks we are being hypersensitive to this because of all that has went down, but between everyone telling me my mom is dangerous to wanting to protect my family, I just don't know what to believe anymore. Any advice is appreciated. Update 8. So, my mother showed up at my house in a frenzy. Thanks for the suggestions for the lock on our front gate and the ring. They've been super helpful up to this point and especially helpful now. Anyway, my mom shows up at our home unannounced and screaming, crying for me and saying how she just needs me. She's crying and banging on our front gate, demanding to speak to me. If this were the old me, I would have let her in, and to be honest, I almost did, but the new me decided to call the police. When they came, the police immediately told her to leave our property. It took a few moments, but then she finally left. I don't feel good about this. She's my mom. I feel obligated to speak to her. But she has also been so terrible to me and my wife. I'm going to try to go to sleep and do my best. But I've got a lot of thinking to do and maybe some more to share with my therapist. Update 9. Hello everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I thought I'd give a quick update on my mother. Without going into too much detail, she drove to our house one evening and had a psychotic break in front of our home that involved self-harm. It was enough for us to call the police again, and she is now spending time at a mental facility. That's all I'll speak about on that matter. With grandparents' rights not really on the horizon anymore, my wife has approached me and said she still wants the trial separation and the divorce. She feels like these last 2 months or so we have been playing house in order to keep up a good look in case my mother decided to pull something and that she's put up with the crazy for too long. This is starting to impact her own mental health. So she has moved herself and our daughter back in with her parents for the time being and wants to speak about our options with our lawyer on Monday. So I guess we will start that process soon. I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I also can't blame her. I asked her if all of the bad really outweighed the good, and she gave me the most stern look and said, "Our relationship has been almost nothing but bad," and walked away. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I know these are things I need to bring up to my therapist. Thank you for listening. Update 10. I've learned that my mom views me as her husband. My therapist calls this emotional incest, although at times it has unfortunately crossed over into my mother actually wanting to get physical with me, such as her snuggling me in bed and sending me nude photos, and in some cases some small sexual activity that I've repressed and rather not get into here. This is the first time I've actually written it out or said it out loud besides with my therapist. Coming to terms that you've been sexually assaulted by your own mother when you were a minor does not feel great. I don't know how long it'll take me to work through these feelings, but please know I am working on them. I've learned that because my mom views me as her husband, she sees herself in constant competition with my wife. My therapist has pointed out that my mom views herself as the mistress, which may explain the nude photos. I've learned that my mom has very likely never properly grieved the death of my father. I've learned that almost every girlfriend I've had, including my wife, has never been good enough for my mom because only she believes that she's good enough for me. My therapist believes that at the risk of protecting me after my father passed away, that my mom went ballistic and turned me into her husband. My therapist calls it a son's band. I've learned that years of mental and emotional manipulation on my mom's side has gotten me here. Up until I had my first reality check, I really did believe all of this was annoying but normal and just how she is. I still feel slightly guilty over everything that has happened, but my guilt has turned into anger. I feel like I've been robbed of a normal life. However, being in therapy has opened my eyes to what can happen next though. I'm only in my 30s. I still have time to live a great life and be a great dad to my daughter. As always, thanks for listening. I'm always thankful for the advice and the support. As you've probably guessed, my normal meter is still a bit off, so it's good to hear other perspectives. Update 11. My wife and I decided to go through with a trial separation. She and our daughter are at her parents' house for the time being while I am at our home. It's the most awful feeling, and I've never been this empty before. Divorce is coming. I guess I should start calling her my ex-wife. I'm continuing with counseling so I can work through not just my personal feelings, but also what next steps are going to be. I've always wanted to move out of state and maybe try out a new career, but I don't want to be far from my daughter. We'll see how it goes. I'd also like to thank all of you for your well wishes on my last post. I tried to respond to all of them, but I really just couldn't. I break down crying every time I see support. They're happy tears, but they're also a reminder of what could have been. Thank you for listening. Update 12. I guess I should have seen it coming, but I almost wish she hadn't told me. She said that it was more of a heads up in case I see her out and about on a weekend or something. We're separated, so it's not against the rules for her to date or anything, and we're in a no-fault state for the divorce that's inevitably coming our way. I'm not in a place emotionally where I'm ready to date. I'm not even close, but hearing that she'll be meeting up with an old flame for dinner next weekend rocked me to my core. It means I really can't get her back. I did try one last time and it did not go well. She said she's done with coming second to my mother and now second to the drama that's been going on in our lives, and that she doesn't want to raise our daughter in an unhealthy environment. Understood. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Best friend since childhood slept with my BF during our 3-year relationship. After she got hospitalized, my mom took her side and tried making me forgive her. We're both 20F, and we've been friends since reception, 4 to 5 years old. UK thing. She was my sister, my rock. We stood by each other through everything. When my parents divorced, she was there to offer a shoulder for me to cry on. When her grandmother died, I was there keeping her afloat. Throughout high school, I've been dating my boyfriend, 21M, for about 3 years. We started dating in 6th form, a version of UK college, and he was my first serious relationship. I introduced him to my family. He was many of my firsts. He was sweet, a little awkward being a gamer guy, but he treated me to date nights and always made me feel special. Maybe this is me being young and dumb, but I thought I'd marry this guy someday. This was something I told my best friend. Well, about a month ago, while my boyfriend was in the shower, I saw a text notification pop up on his phone. We look at each other's notifications all the time, so I grabbed his phone to see it. It was from her, asking if they were still on for tonight and if she should wear his favorite dress. He told me he was hanging out with friends and going drinking. Him going drinking with friends wasn't unusual, so I never thought anything of it. But in hindsight, I wonder how much of him going out was with friends and how much of it was going out with her. I saved screenshots of their conversations. I sent them to myself. I show him the messages when he came out of the bathroom and demanded he explained himself about them. I couldn't contain how upset and angry and hurt I was. An argument ensued where I told him he was disgusting, and I left his place shortly after. Arriving home, I started getting bombarded with calls and texts from my best friend. I answered none of her calls. I couldn't stomach hearing her voice. But her texts ranged from "she never meant to hurt me," "my boyfriend hit on her first, it didn't mean anything." Then it got angry, saying I should hear her out. If I was a real friend, I would take her calls. I'm being petty and childish for not listening to her side. Then back to sad, saying I was her closest friend in the world, and she didn't want to lose me. My boyfriend was strangely quiet during this time. After a few days, I got myself together enough to send them both messages. Maybe it was cowardly, but I didn't have the strength to call them. I told my now ex-boyfriend that we were done and I won't give cheaters any chances with me. He responded by trying to call me, but after the 3rd or 4th attempt, he gave up. He sent me a final message saying it wasn't that big of a deal, that they just fooled around, but agreeing he didn't want to date me anymore. My ex-best friend was more persistent. After I told her I wanted nothing to do with her, day after day I'd get messages and calls from her demanding to talk, demanding we resolve this, demanding I not say anything to anyone, saying she stopped seeing him, saying she'll kill herself if I don't talk to her. Really messed up stuff. I ended up confiding to a mutual friend about what was going on because I was seriously beginning to wonder if I was being a bitch. This friend reassured me that my feelings were justified. However, I wasn't expecting this friend to spread around what happened. The gossip spread like wildfire, and a few days ago, my ex-best friend tried to take her life. I said nothing. I haven't visited her in the hospital. I haven't sent any messages to her family. Now her older sister keeps messaging me telling me I'm a heartless bitch for leaving her at her lowest, for not trying to prevent this, and that everyone makes mistakes and that her sister didn't intentionally hurt me. Maybe it does make me a heartless bitch, but I don't care. I'm relieved she survived, but I'll never forgive her. I'll never forgive her betrayal. She destroyed our friendship when she slept with my boyfriend. Date 1. Hey again, it's been a while. First, I want to thank everyone for all of their comments and support. In hindsight, I know now I wasn't being a bitch, but in the moment when I was being bombarded by texts and calls from her family, it's hard not to let those thoughts mess with your head. I didn't know if I was going to post an update, but some things have happened, so this might get a little long. Sorry. Giving fake names. Ex-BFF is Nikki, her older sister is Tammy, ex-BF is Josh. I'll name anyone relevant as I go. So I mentioned in a comment that my mom wanted to speak to me later that day. I had a few replies warning me that she would try to pressure me into forgiving Nikki, and they were right. She came over to my dad's that evening and wanted a conversation in private. She asked if I'd spoken to Nikki yet. I said no. She asked if I was going to. I said no. I was trying to be as firm as possible because I knew what she was about to do. She asked, "Don't you think you should?" My response was, "No, I don't see why I should." I sent her a final message almost a month ago. This is where things began to really go south in the conversation. "Mom, love, she's in the hospital right now. She needs all the support she can get. You're meant to be her friend." Me, I didn't even know about her condition until her mother called me. Really? I'm meant to be her friend after she slept with Josh behind my back? I didn't say anything about her because I didn't want to talk about her. Mom, are you really going to hold onto a silly grudge? I understand she hurt you, but she's hurting so much more right now, love. Me, she's hurting. Mom, yes, you both are. I raised you to be a kind, forgiving person. Why can't you forgive her? Me, what, like how Dad should have forgiven you? This wasn't my finest moment. I didn't bring it up before because it wasn't relevant, but the reason why my parents divorced was due to infidelity on Mom's end, and it wasn't only a one-time thing. Not that it matters even if it had been, but my mom always believed Dad should have just forgiven her. I admit this was a low blow for me, and the conversation spiraled into an argument from there, with both of us saying some not-so-kind things to each other. Eventually, I decided the conversation was over because we were just going around in circles and heading into yelling territory. So I told her to leave and I'll try talking to her again when we've both calmed down. When she was leaving, she said this, "I hope you're not as cruel as your father." I'm typically not an angry person, but this infuriated and hurt me. I lived 50-50 between my parents. They both made sure I had everything I could need or want. But she felt her situation and struggles were undeserved. Dad never helped with bills or payments that didn't involve me. She expected more. Cheaters always do. I didn't say anything when she left. I just blocked her number and social media accounts and cried. She cared more about the girl who had hurt her daughter than said daughter. She realized pretty quick what had happened and came back the next day, but Dad told her I didn't want to talk to her. True, and she had to leave. It took maybe half an hour before she finally left. The next few days, she kept trying to reach me through other people, but I stayed silent. The Friday after my post, I decided I felt calm enough to talk to her and unblocked her. We spoke over the phone, which wasn't as exciting as above. Basically, it was her apologizing and telling me she was wrong for trying to force me to forgive Nikki, that she'll respect my decision, but tried to suggest I think about it. I very firmly told her I was not forgiving Nikki. She just said, "Okay." Things didn't really feel the same with us. I couldn't bring myself to be as chatty with her as I was before, and it didn't help that she kept giving me updates about Nikki. The first time she did it, she told me Nikki had been put on a 72-hour psych hold, assessed, and eventually released. I told her I didn't want any updates on Nikki's situation. I won't stop her from checking in, but I didn't want to be involved. She complained and said she thought I'd want to visit her, but I threatened to block her again if she kept pushing, and she shut up. Nothing was mentioned about Nikki for a couple of weeks before Mom again broke my boundary and brought her up, telling me about how Josh had stopped talking to her and how Nikki needed a shoulder to cry on. I again told her I didn't want to know and this was her last chance not to bring her up or I would cut her from my life. She complained again but eventually promised it wouldn't happen again. Maybe I should have learned from my mistakes because I know my mother. She doesn't take no for an answer. It was really quiet for a while. My friends and I had all basically carried on from what happened, and even though I know a couple of them still occasionally talk to Nikki, they never bring her up around me or tell her how I'm doing. I thought I could finally close this chapter on my life. But nope. Today, my mother called me and asked if I wanted to get lunch. I hadn't seen her in a while, so what was the harm? I head to the Weatherspoons we planned to eat at, and who do I find sitting with my mom? Nikki and her sister Tammy. As soon as Nikki sees me, she gets up and tries to hug me, but I just raise a hand and take a step back, and this girl has the audacity to look upset. Mom immediately knows she's messed up because she's scrambling with all of the excuses. It hurts to see you two fall apart like this. You were so close. I thought you'd forgive her by now. And my favorite, she made a mistake. She misses you. During this time, Nikki has been quiet, and I can see Tammy glaring at me. I'm just so fucking angry and upset. I honestly didn't think she'd pull something like this. I wanted to leave and cry, but I looked at Nikki and said, for someone who's made a mistake, she sure hasn't apologized for it yet. She had this guilty look on her face and muttered something about me having her blocked and having no way to. I said, is that really all you have to say? And she just looked at me confused. I was done. I turned to leave, and her sister started yelling after me saying that I owed Nikki a second chance with all the trauma I put her through, while Nikki was begging me to just listen to her and talk to her. I told them all to fuck off and never contact me again and left. I managed to get out of there before Tammy started a fight and went home, where I sent my mom a text a while ago telling her she'd better lose my number because she no longer has a spot in my life. Then I blocked her and just cried. My dad's been doing his best to comfort me, but it just hurts so bad that my own mother did this to me. So that's where things are at right now. I'll update if anything else happens, but this whole situation really sucks. Update 2, December 27th, 2024. Hey there everyone. I first want to apologize for taking so long to give you an update and to also thank you for your kind words. I've not been able to reply to many messages and I've had a lot, but I've taken the time to read through every single one, and I appreciate every single one of you. This Christmas has been amazing. I spent it with my family, with my dad. I went out Boxing Day night with my friends to party hard and regretted harder the following day. I'm in a much better place than I was back in December 2023. That's kind of why I struggled to give you all an update, because around Christmas plus New Year's 2023, I was not in a good place. I really needed to focus on myself and work on getting myself in a better place. As of January 2024, I've been no contact with my mother. Unfortunately, I've seen her since then and I've done my best to avoid talking to her in the 3 occasions I've had to be in the same place as her. Not out of choice, mind you, but it is what it is. During Christmas 2023, she had expected that I was spending it with her and her side of the family. Given the events at that time, this was obviously not happening, and my dad told her as much. She lost her mind. She refused to take no as an answer leading up to Christmas, to the point Dad and I left for my paternal aunt's house on Christmas Eve to spend the night there. According to a neighbor, my birth giver showed up pretty early in the morning to catch us leaving but was irate to learn we already weren't there. Thankfully, my aunt had moved house quite recently, so my mother didn't know the new address. But we came home to parcels completely destroyed on our porch the following Boxing Day. There was even a Christmas card labeled to me, but inside was a horrible letter from my mother describing me as the worst daughter on the planet. That honestly destroyed me, and I spent New Year's a mess. It's difficult cutting off your own mother. I spent half of January 2024 trying to fix things with her, but it came to a head when I realized I was the only one forced to compromise. I finally cut off contact, and it's been that way since. There's been more between then and now, but I think those are incidents I'll post on my Reddit page or in the comments of this post to prevent it from getting too long. In terms of Nikki, I've heard she's doing better. We've not spoken since my mother's lunch escapade, but she's found a job and, according to a mutual friend, found a new circle. Despite everything that she's put me through, I'm happy for her. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Best friend made me babysit at her daughter's wedding because my wheelchair and oxygen tank would ruin photos. Now 80 guests had a party without them and they're blaming me. I was so happy to see a wedding invitation in my mailbox. I pulled it out and a little note fell out on an index card. But I looked at the invitation first. It was truly beautiful, and I immediately stuck it to my fridge like the work of art it was. It was addressed to my husband and me, and I was beyond stoked. I love weddings. I tend to get teary-eyed and smile until my face hurts at the joy of new beginnings and all the love. I was even a wedding singer. That's how much I love them. I picked up the note card and read that, while my husband was invited, I'd be in another room helping to babysit all the children there with several other female invitees. There's a special room for children at the church, and that's where I'd be for everything. I'd still need to dress for a wedding in case I wind up in any photos, but I'd be taking my reception meal with the children, and I'd be with all the kids for the ceremony. Then there was a link for their gift registry. Oh, and the meals for my husband and myself would be $100 each, and we have a link to pay it when we digitally RSVP. The first problem here is that I am disabled at 50 years old. Legally, I use oxygen. I use a walker when I need to walk long distances. I sometimes have to give up the walker entirely and use a wheelchair. I'm not proud of it, but there it is. I could happily sit in a room and look at kids, but I'd be pretty useless to prevent a fall or stop a child from choking or anything else that would require me to move quickly. Second, my husband isn't the one who has been friends with these people since childhood. I am. Why would he be invited to watch the ceremony and be part of the reception, but not me? My husband said he'd happily watch the kids and let me attend the wedding and reception, but the invitation specified that only other female invitees would be watching the kids, so I doubt they'd let him. Is this a normal thing at weddings now? Do you pick guests to babysit other guests' children? Should I call them up and explain my health situation, even though they already know it and visit me during my multiple hospitalizations a year? I hate having to pull the health card, but honestly, what were they thinking? I confess that I feel offended and hurt that I'm nothing more than a babysitter to them, who is expected to pay for my supper and babysit for free. Would I be wrong to simply tell them we won't be able to attend and to find another sitter? And if we don't go, do we still send a gift? Updating to address some questions. I know these folks because my mom, RIP, mom, and the bride's grandma were besties, so I grew up with the bride's mom as an almost sister to me. We went to school together, graduated together, worked at the same place twice, and have been super close since. The bride is like a goddaughter, at least I thought she was. I'm gobsmacked here. The church where they are getting married is a Southern Baptist church. They aren't members. None of us are overly religious. They just liked the venue and booked it. I've never been inside, but it's lovely on the outside, and apparently, it has a child care room that is big enough for a bunch of women and kids to hold up comfortably for a wedding and reception. We're all American. The groom's family is related to my family via marriage, and the bride and groom met at my house at a cookout a few years ago. I've always been way closer to the bride's family, though. I knew that there had been a proposal. I got FaceTimed about 10 minutes after it happened, and my husband and I cried and laughed and wished them well and oohed and awed over their story in the ring. I was expecting an invitation. Sure, but not like this. The last time I had lunch with the bride's mom, she told me they're inviting around 200 people, so it'll be a large wedding with, I'm assuming, a ton of children. No, I don't hate kids. I love kids. I would have loved to have kids of my own, but my body just wouldn't do it. It took 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth to finally make me accept that it wouldn't happen for us. We are in the process of adopting 2 young adults that we brought into our home when we found out they were kicked out and homeless at 18. They've lived with us for years, and we're making it legal. They call us Mom and Pop, and we're a family. I'm still considering my options. I've started and deleted multiple emails to the bride's mom. I'm a raw nerve right now, and my tone isn't the kindest. I want to keep it all in writing, so there can be no he said/she said. I plan to ask if they incorrectly sent me the note about babysitting since they know I physically cannot do that. But every inception of the email led with WTF, Donna. So I need to think about it some more. Smile. Thanks for all the comments, I'm reading them all. Comment where OP has replied, Con. I'm not proud of it, but there it is. Sorry to not reply to your initial question, but this comment caught my attention. I just wanted to let you know that you should actually be very proud of yourself and your body for pushing through and using the equipment that is needed to support your body well. OP, thank you so much. I never expected this to be my reality at 50 years old. Never. I went from being so healthy and doing all kinds of sports, I rocked roller derby and could swim like a fish and loved to play tennis, to this, and sometimes I feel like it's not even my own body I'm living in anymore. It's just not okay. Therapy is helping me accept it, but it's an uphill battle that I feel like I can't win. So thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Update 1. I spoke to my friend, the mother of the bride, and I'm pretty upset. I've been bawling for most of the day. She called and said that they were getting a lot of backlash from the wedding guests. No one wants to pay $100 for dinner, and only 3 of the women asked were okay with babysitting. I told her I understood that the guests were upset because it's just tacky to 1. Be asked to pay, and 2. Be told you were invited but only to babysit. I told her I would not be a babysitter at all. No, just no. She got mad and brought up how we were lifelong friends. She said I'd be helping them more by babysitting than I'd be helping by simply sitting in a pew watching. I reminded her that I couldn't physically help at all due to, being legally disabled. She said they completely understood that and expected me to simply supervise the other sitters since they trusted me most. Again, I told her that I felt it was insulting to be voluntold. Thanks, Reddit, for that word. That I'd be babysitting and that I had no desire to do that, especially not dressed in formal wear. Then we got to the truth. She said that she didn't know if I'd be in a wheelchair that day or require a walker. That's fair. I don't always know which one I'll need. She said that they wanted everyone in pews for the wedding video, and me sitting in a wheelchair would make me stick out and ruin video/photos. I said if I need a wheelchair that day, then I can move to a pew, and my husband can put the wheelchair in another room or back in our car. I may not even need it that day. Then she says, well, space is limited in the pews. You would take up the space of 2 people with your purse and oxygen tank. I said, no, I would not. I wouldn't bring a purse in, and the oxygen tank either sits on my lap or between my feet. It's like a little backpack. Then she said, well, having you and oxygen in the photos would be distracting from the other people. And there you have it. Words were exchanged, and she hung up on me. I haven't been removed from any social media yet, but I fully expect to be. I already feel awful for being this way at only 50 years old. I didn't choose this. I didn't want this. If she thinks it's awful having it photographed, just imagine living with it, which is what I told her before she hung up on me. I'm devastated, just devastated. Update 2. I'm not in the greatest headspace. I don't think I've ever been less okay, honestly. I did not register to RSVP or communicate with them further until another invite got in touch with me and said that the mother of the bride, a person I thought of as basically my sister, was bad-mouthing me into the ground. I explained my side, and our mutual friend was livid. They told the mother of the bride and the bride that they were wrong to want to exclude me because I might or might not need a wheelchair and would have oxygen on my face. I could remove the oxygen for photos, they told her. So the mother of the bride sent me a message saying, and I quote, well, if you're going to be butthurt about the aesthetic we want to achieve and try to turn other guests against us, then you can come and sit in a pew but not in photos, and we'll try to get the videographer to do edits to the wedding vid too, but I won't forget how you made this difficult for us. I replied, how did I make it difficult, other than existing? She replied, you clearly told mutual friend about what I told you regarding your wheelchair and oxygen, and she's telling everyone else. We're getting a ton of hate. I said, she asked me if I was attending, and I told her no and explained why. I didn't lie to her. I told her exactly what you said. You didn't tell me not to tell anyone your reasons. If they're valid reasons to you, then you shouldn't care who knows. So I'm now blocked by the bride, the mom, the dad, and the groom. A friendship I've had my entire life is over. A goddaughter that I helped nurture and care for is just gone now. We paid for the bride's car insurance, gas, and cell phone all through high school and college because we wanted her focused on just her studies and not a part-time job. Her parents got her a car but insisted she worked, but her grades fell when she did and we helped her. And this is how they thank us? This is how they repay our kindness? I guess I'm a great friend when I'm giving money, but I'm not good enough to be seen. I felt like a burden my whole life, and this has set me back so far. I'm just not okay. Update 3. Apparently, my post went sort of viral because it was on Fox News and a site called Bored Panda. A few mutual friends reached out and asked if it was me, and I admitted that it was. They were told something completely different about the situation. The bride's mother told them that I refused to come because of my health difficulties and that I was afraid I would ruin the wedding and declined the RSVP. She even claimed that she had been begging me to attend ever since the engagement happened, which was a bold-faced lie. I am the one who organized and paid for the after-engagement party so they could announce the happy news to everyone, and I was clear to everyone that I couldn't wait to attend the wedding. So I sent screenshots, photos of the invitation and the note card telling me I'd be babysitting, and then the showdown where I was told I could sit in the pew and just be edited out of the video and would not be in any photos. I also posted it on Facebook and shared receipts there, too. Well, World War III has officially commenced. Granted, I'm getting this all third and fourth hand, but here's the latest word. Word has spread fast. Links to the news article have made it all over the place, and I've been told that the few ladies who had agreed to babysit have backed out and asked if there was something wrong with them that would make them not fit to sit in the pews or be in photos. And I think that's probably the case since 2 of them have unnatural hair coloring, and the other has facial piercings. The church that was booked as the venue has been notified, and I'm hearing it's probably not going to happen there because the pastor's daughter is wheelchair-bound after a car accident. He was going to officiate, but now he says he's conflicted about it and the message it would send. My ex-friend and the bride have blown up my husband's phone because I blocked them after this went public. They blocked me first on all of the social media spots, and he let it go on for a few days to see what they had to say. He has blocked them, but the bulk of it is that I'm jealous that I was never blessed with any children of my own, so that's why I'm ruining this for them. I'm hateful and vile and vindictive because I hate them for their clear health. I mentioned that the groom is related to me by marriage, right? That whole branch of the family tree has now divided itself, with some on my side and some on the bride's side. The groom hasn't contacted us at all, but his mother did and told me that I was wrong for sharing personal business and that I need to let the bride have her wedding how she wants it. I don't agree that I did anything wrong here. I can't help that I'm sick. They've made me feel like utter trash that should just be tossed into the landfill. I hurt. I literally ache because of this. So, hi Donna, my ex-best friend and practical sister. If you're reading this, you devastated me. I'm not okay. I don't know that I'll ever be okay again. I invested time and money into both you and your daughter. I gave you both a home when your marriage was messed up and never charged you rent or asked for help with groceries or utilities for over a year. You lived in our home and we paid your way. So you were wrong to treat me this way. My oxygen mask and possible need for a wheelchair should be the last thing on either of your minds, because what matters most is that I, feeling as bad as I normally do, was still going to put on my best dress, make myself look presentable, plant a smile on my face through my pain, and show up for you like I always have. But I never, ever will again. If people noticed me in your photos at all, it would have been because I had the biggest and most proud of anyone there, and they'd see the love I had for you radiating off the image. You will regret this one day when I'm gone and you realize that there are more important things in life than a perfect photo. Update 4. The wedding was today, November 16th, 2024. Friends rented a big cabin venue about 20 minutes from the wedding venue, and everyone who was offended over being asked to pay at the reception and babysit or serve the food. Yes, several people got invitations telling them they were invited but would be serving food at the reception they paid to eat at. Got together at the cabin, me included. I was on the fence about going because I really didn't want to sit there and talk about everything and rehash it, but that wasn't my experience at all. I had a truly lovely time. My husband and I even danced to our wedding song, and I had mixed drinks, quite a few, so forgive me if this is typos lol. 2 of the bridesmaids opted out of the wedding over mistreatment, and without anyone knowing, they sent letters to all the guests who had been invited to tell them what went down with me and others being asked to babysit/be servers. Those guests were given the address of the cabin. They were the 2 bridesmaids who addressed all the envelopes and still had the guest list, from what they told me anyway. We had a great time. There were about 80 of us before all was said and done, though I didn't take a head count. It was packed. Several people went to the wedding but didn't attend the reception. They refused to pay for their meal and came to our get-together instead, including the 2 bridesmaids who told me all about what I was being called and the story of how I was trying to ruin their wedding because I was jealous of their good health. The bridesmaids who backed out of the wedding due to bridezilla behavior were posting a ton of pics of all of us dancing and eating. We all chipped in dollars weeks ago for catering and booze, and was seen by my ex-bestie because she unblocked me. I unblocked her weeks ago in the hope that she'd come around, much as I'm loath to admit it, and called me to tell me off again. I told her I didn't plan the alternate reception, but I was invited and came because they didn't care about my health or me ruining any photos, just me having a good time. Apparently, the wedding was ruined because of me. They had invited hundreds of people, and the church wasn't even halfway full, and the reception had less than 30 people. So that's $3,000 the guests paid when the food and liquor cost around $15,000. And it's my fault they're eating that cost now. They likened me to the Antichrist and the devil and claimed I had to be possessed to do this to a young girl, and the groom when he's a member of my family. I said I didn't do anything. I told the truth, and if the truth hurts you, then maybe you were wrong to do it. Did you consider that? She hung up on me and started calling others and demanding the address so they could come to the actual reception. No one gave it to her. I just got home at 11 p.m. It was a great day. I laughed. I even felt up to dancing a little. I had good news. I don't need my oxygen all the time now and just at night via CPAP or after exercise, and I've been going to the pool and doing senior aquatics as much as I can, and it's helped so much with my breathing and my mobility. I can walk around the whole grocery store now without needing to sit down on my walker. I still use the walker for long periods due to dizziness from Meniere's disease, but I think I'm doing better. At least I'm trying. I feel very proud of myself, friends. Anyway, the wedding still happened, but they didn't have the numbers they expected, and I've heard that someone suggested they donate the excess food instead of throwing it away. But they didn't, which sucks because I just know that firemen or police or the hospital or the homeless shelter would have been so happy to get it. I think I'm doing better mentally after today because everyone who talks to me told me it was wrong to exclude me because of my wheelchair or oxygen. I did have my walker with me today, but not my wheelchair or an oxygen tube. I had it in my car just in case I needed it, and there were a couple of times I could have used it, but I was determined not to be in any pick with it out of pure spite. I also wore the pretty dress I bought for the wedding and had many compliments. I'm still hurt and angry and miss having that closeness with their family, but I'm going to be okay. And that's a wrap. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Brother's fiancée made me a bridesmaid, then bullied me for leaving my ex and banned me from the wedding, but now my brother called off their marriage after finding out how she treated me. This week was supposed to be a monumental moment for my brother, Chris, as he was prepared to marry his fiancée, April. Chris and April have been together for just over 2 years now, and their relationship has blossomed into something truly special. Chris had proposed to her during their recent picture-perfect trip to Greece. When he came back, his joy was palpable and we all felt it. The entire family was thrilled, not only for Chris, but also because April was such a lovely person and the two of them just seemed like a great match. It felt like everything was falling into place as the wedding plans unfolded. April, it turned out, had always dreamed of having a grand, almost fairy tale-like wedding, and Chris, being the devoted partner he is, was ready to make that dream a reality. He didn't want anything to be less than perfect for her. He took on the responsibility of covering the expenses, which wasn't a small feat as a vice president at a company. He's got a good job and has worked hard to reach that point, but organizing a large wedding is still a significant undertaking. Yet Chris never once seemed to mind. It was clear he was fully committed to making sure April had everything she wanted. The rest of the family, of course, were all in, offering our support and looking forward to the celebration, knowing that this wedding was going to be something truly special. 2 months ago, April asked me out for lunch and she asked me to be part of her bridesmaid squad for the wedding, something I honestly hadn't expected. You see, I have just recently moved back home after having lived far away from my family for the past few years. So April and I hadn't had many chances to get to know each other closely. Before this lunch, we had only probably interacted a handful of times at family gatherings or events whenever I was in town, so I was a bit surprised by her invitation. April went on to explain that my brother would be really happy to see me up there with them and that she saw me as the right fit to stand beside her on such an important day, alongside some of her closest friends. For a little bit of context, Chris and I have always been close, and knowing that my presence at the altar would mean something special to him made the gesture even more meaningful. Hence, I was deeply honored by her request. It felt like she was not only welcoming me into the wedding, but also opening the door to a closer connection between us. So I accepted the invitation. It felt like a significant step toward building a stronger relationship with April, as well as being a meaningful way to support my brother on one of the most important days of his life. Now, I want to mention here more about exactly why I moved back home. It was because I recently got out of a toxic and abusive relationship. It's still hard to believe that my ex, who I had once trusted and cared for, could have become someone entirely different. My ex-boyfriend and I had been together for a long time, and for most of our relationship, things seemed pretty good on the surface. We had what felt like a stable relationship with no significant arguments or conflicts. I think that's part of what made everything that followed so hard to grasp. There were no warning signs, no gradual buildup. He wasn't the type to ever raise his voice or act aggressively. And then, without any clear reason, things took a horrifying turn in our relationship. Out of nowhere, his behavior began to shift. He became aggressive in ways I'd never seen before, and it felt like I was suddenly living with a stranger. He would suddenly start shouting at me for small things or get very close to my face if he got pissed. There was suddenly this darkness in him that I hadn't known existed, and it scared me. Then one evening, it all escalated. We were doing what we usually did, just watching Netflix and chilling. We were casually talking about which movie to watch next, nothing heated or contentious. It was the kind of trivial discussion couples have all the time. That's why what happened next was so shocking and devastating. Without any provocation, he turned to me and, before I could even process what was happening, he slapped me across the face. The force of it took me completely by surprise. It was as if I had been pulled out of reality, and for a split second I couldn't comprehend what had just occurred. My cheeks stung with a searing pain that spread through my face, and almost immediately tears welled up in my eyes, not just from the physical pain, but from the overwhelming emotional shock. What disturbed me even more was the look on his face. He didn't seem to care. There was no remorse, no sign of regret. He was completely nonchalant, as if he had done something perfectly normal. Then, in a cold and emotionless tone, he told me that I should never argue with him again about which movie to watch. His tone implied that I had somehow deserved what had just happened simply because I had dared to express a preference for a movie. He then picked a film of his choosing and continued to watch, as if nothing had happened, leaving me stunned, hurt, and confused. For the first time, I felt like the person sitting next to me might be a monster. That night marked the end of whatever relationship we once had, and it was clear I needed to get out. This wasn't a person I could trust or feel safe with anymore. It wasn't just the slap, it was the complete lack of humanity in his reaction, the way he thought it was acceptable to control me with violence. Once the initial shock wore off, I got up from the couch without saying a word and headed upstairs. The adrenaline kicked in, and all I could think about was getting out. I grabbed my bags and started to pack. As I was packing, I could hear him shouting after me, telling me I was overreacting, calling me weak for not being able to handle one slap. He was taunting me that even though I went to the gym, I was still not strong enough. His words cut deeper than the physical pain. I couldn't believe how insensitive and dismissive he was being, how little he understood or cared about the damage he had just done. The fact that he was trying to justify what happened, minimizing his actions and making it seem like I was in the wrong for wanting to leave, made it all the more terrifying. This wasn't the man I thought I knew, and I realized that staying any longer could only lead to more harm. I needed to remove myself from that situation immediately. So, I walked out without saying a word to him, as I didn't want to escalate things further. For the next few days, I stayed at a hotel, trying to figure out what to do next. On one hand, I was devastated. This was someone I had been with for a long time. We had built a life together and his family had become like my own. But on the other hand, I knew I had made the right decision to leave. There was no going back after what had happened. No way to undo the damage or trust him again. When his parents found out what had happened, they reached out to me. I knew they would eventually. After all, they had always considered me a part of their family, and it wasn't like me to just disappear without explanation. When they called, I told them everything. I didn't hold back about how his behavior had changed so drastically in recent months, how he had become more aggressive and controlling, and of course how it all culminated in that night when he hit me. To my relief, they were concerned too. They almost couldn't believe what I was telling them, and like me, they struggled to reconcile this version of him with the son they thought they knew. They agreed that this wasn't like him at all, and they acknowledged how serious the situation had become. I think it was hard for them to hear, but at least they didn't try to defend his actions or dismiss my experience. That gave me some comfort, knowing that I wasn't alone in recognizing how wrong his behavior was. Everyone who knew him, including his own family, would have said the same thing. This wasn't the person we knew, and something had clearly gone very wrong. That week, his parents visited him, and they also noticed something was seriously off. It was the way he was acting in general, erratic and out of character. Alarmed by what they saw, They decided to take him to the hospital to get him checked out. It was during that visit that they discovered he had a brain tumor. The news was shocking, to say the least. Suddenly, everything that had happened, all of his strange behavior, the aggression, and the sudden shift in his personality, started to make sense. It wasn't that he had become abusive out of nowhere. He had a personality shift because he was dealing with something far beyond his control. The tumor was affecting his behavior in ways none of us could have predicted. When I found out, I was deeply relieved. It meant that the person I had cared for, the person I thought I knew, hadn't suddenly turned into an abuser. His actions were the result of a medical condition that neither of us had known about. I started to feel incredibly guilty for leaving the way I did, even though I had no way of knowing what was really going on at the time, of course. Despite this revelation, it didn't change the fact that things between us had already fallen apart. We both met after his checkup and agreed that it was best for us to go our separate ways. The tumor explained his actions, but it didn't erase what had happened, and I still resented how he had slapped me that night. There was too much hurt, confusion, and fear still lingering, and it wasn't something we could simply move past. So we made the difficult decision to break up. It was heartbreaking. I had spent so much time with him, and despite everything, I still cared about him deeply. After the breakup, I felt completely lost. It was a lot to process. The trauma of what had happened, the guilt of leaving, and the grief of ending a long-term relationship that I thought would last. That's when I decided to move back home. I needed a fresh start, a change of scenery, and the support of my family to help me heal. This backstory about my ex is essential because it explains a lot about why April started to resent me after she found out about my past relationship. You see, my whole family knows the details of what I went through, and they've been nothing but supportive. They understood how impossible that situation was and why I had no choice but to leave. No one has ever blamed me for walking away from my ex, especially given the circumstances. However, when April found out about what happened, she had a very different reaction. April is quite religious, and her views about relationships and commitment stem heavily from her faith. Whenever we get together for any family event leading up to her wedding, whether it was lunch or some casual outing, April would make backhanded comments here and there that left me feeling judged and upset. She made it clear that she thought I had made the wrong decision by leaving my ex. According to her, it was wrong to abandon a partner during difficult times, regardless of the circumstances, and she would talk about how people who leave their loved ones in such situations end up with bad karma. Naturally, this would infuriate me. I was already dealing with my own guilt and heartbreak, trying to come to terms with the fact that I had left someone who was dealing with a serious medical condition, even though his behavior had become abusive. It wasn't like I walked away easily. It was a decision I agonized over. But at the same time, I knew I hadn't been married to my ex, so I had no obligations, and I shouldn't have been expected to stay in a relationship that had turned toxic, especially when his mood swings and aggression were endangering my well-being. Still, April's comments would dig at me, making me feel worse about an already painful situation. I confided in my brother about how much April's remarks bothered me. My brother, though, would try to defend her, explaining that April's upbringing was a bit different than ours and that she had always been taught to stick it out in relationships. Hence, she felt the way she did. He would urge me not to take her comments too personally, telling me that she wasn't trying to be hurtful. He meant well, but it didn't make things any easier for me. Every time I saw April, I braced myself for some new comment that would make me feel like I was being judged for a decision that I already struggled with. Things took a frustrating turn when April and my brother sent out wedding invitations to everyone. She had graciously given everyone a +1, which I appreciated, but I sent back my RSVP indicating that it would just be me attending. I wasn't bringing anyone as I was still recovering from my breakup and wasn't in any place to have someone new in my life. To my surprise, April began insisting that I should invite my ex to the wedding. I scoffed at the idea and told her plainly that this was impossible. I hadn't even spoken to him since the breakup, and the idea of inviting him to my brother's wedding, of all places, made no sense whatsoever. I was just beginning to heal, and bringing him into such an intimate family event felt wrong on every level. But April didn't seem to understand that. She kept pushing the idea, repeating how it would be a good gesture and how I should let bygones be bygones. She insisted that he must be suffering after I left him, and I should at least invite him to have a good time at their wedding. It felt like she wasn't even trying to understand my feelings about the situation. Normally, I would just nod along and try to ignore her comments, like my brother had told me, just to keep the peace. But as you can understand, I was starting to get very irritated by her. There was one occasion where she again crossed the line. We were all out for lunch. April had invited her entire bridesmaid squad, and we were discussing dresses and other wedding details, trying to enjoy the fun and excitement that comes with wedding planning. But of course, April found a way to steer the conversation back to my ex. In front of everyone, she brought up the situation again and started telling the other girls how I had been mean for breaking up with that poor fellow after he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. She framed it like I was some heartless woman who had walked out on him in his hardest time. I could feel the tension rise in the air as she continued to paint me as the villain in front of the other bridesmaids. It was humiliating and infuriating. Here we were in a supposedly lighthearted setting, talking about dresses and wedding plans, and she was dragging up my most painful personal experience as if it were some casual gossip. The whole thing felt completely inappropriate, and I struggled to keep my composure as the other girls exchanged awkward glances. These girls, April's childhood friends who were going to be her bridesmaids, seemed to share her beliefs and values, likely influenced by their similar religious upbringings. They jumped on the bandwagon and started to bombard me with questions about my ex and our past relationship. Their questioning became relentless, and I could feel my patience slipping away. At that moment, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about my ex anymore. This was about April's inability to respect my choices and boundaries. Without holding back, I asked April outright what her problem was with me. I demanded to know why she was so obsessed with my breakup and my ex. I had never confronted her directly before, so she was visibly taken aback at first. I could see the shock in her expression. She didn't expect me to question her like this, especially not in front of her friends. Finally, she spluttered out an explanation that left me both shocked and furious. April said that now that she was marrying into our family, she felt that if I could give up so easily on my partner, it reflected poorly not only on my upbringing but ultimately on my brother too. She continued to say how my brother had always told her about my relationship with my ex over the years, and hearing that I left such a long-term relationship without giving it any careful thought reflected negatively on my character and, by extension, on my family and my brother. Her words were like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. April somehow felt entitled to tell me what I should have done in a situation that she knew only bits and pieces of. The nerve of her to think that my personal choices had anything to do with her relationship with my brother. I was livid. I firmly told her that my relationship with my ex was none of her business and it never had been. I pointed out that my decisions in life had nothing to do with my family or my brother. I was done letting her cross that line and made it crystal clear that she needed to respect my boundaries by never bringing this up again. The atmosphere at the table grew tense, and I could feel the awkwardness settle over the group. So, I didn't bother to stay there a minute longer and simply left. I had finally said what I needed to say anyway. Since that heated conversation with April, things between us only got worse. She never apologized to me, and neither did I. Every time I thought we might be able to move past it, she found new ways to take out her frustration on me. It started with her nitpicking about my bridesmaid dress. April approved everyone else's dresses without any issue, but when it came to mine, she kept changing her mind. I had to reorder my dress 4 times, each one in line with the wedding theme, yet none seemed to satisfy her. It became clear that this wasn't about the dress. It was about making my life difficult because of the tension between us. I didn't want to start another fight, so I went along with the changes, hoping it would end there. But of course, it didn't. After the dress ordeal, she found something new to criticize. This time, it was about my appearance. She flat out told me that I needed to get a fake tan done before the wedding. I was stunned. I've never had a fake tan in my life, and I had no intention of starting now, especially not for someone else's wedding. April explained that because of my naturally fair complexion, I stood out the most among her bridesmaids, and she wanted me to tone it down so I wouldn't stand out in the wedding photos. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was offensive on so many levels. Being told that my skin tone didn't fit her vision was insulting and hurtful. I firmly told her that there was no way I would be getting a fake tan just to blend in for her pictures. I even offered to stay out of the photos if it bothered her that much, but I wasn't going to change my appearance for her wedding. The next issue that arose was that April wanted all of her bridesmaids to plan an extravagant bachelorette party for her, which on its own wasn't unreasonable, but her expectations were wildly unrealistic. She insisted that we all contribute hundreds of dollars so that we could fly her to an expensive all-inclusive resort. It was a huge financial ask, and I wasn't the only one who found it over the top. Another bridesmaid also protested against the high cost, pointing out that it wasn't feasible for everyone. As usual, April took offense. She scolded me and the other girl during a recent lunch, accusing us of not being good bridesmaids because we weren't willing to spend the kind of money on her. She told us how this was our duty since we were a part of her squad and we shouldn't even be questioning it. It felt like nothing we did was ever going to be enough for her. She kept insisting for us to have this lavish party, but I had finally had enough. I put my foot down and outright refused to cave to her unreasonable demands. I told her that while I was willing to spend money by throwing her a good party, I wasn't going to almost go broke by shelling out hundreds of dollars just to make her happy. That seemed to be the final straw for April. In a fit of rage, she started yelling at me in front of her friends, and then she disinvited me from my own brother's wedding. She told me that if I wasn't willing to spend money on her, it meant that I didn't respect her as my brother's future wife. She continued to say that there was no room for ill-wishers like me on their special day, and therefore, she didn't want me at her wedding anymore. I was floored. It was unbelievable to me that she would go to such lengths over something so petty, to completely exclude me from my brother's big day. It wasn't just a personal slight anymore. She was actively trying to cut me out of one of the most important moments in our family's life. I was hurt, angry, and frustrated beyond words. April had gone from making passive-aggressive comments to trying to humiliate me to now outright banning me from my brother's wedding, all because I wouldn't bow to her ridiculous demands. I wanted to argue with her further, but I reminded myself that my brother loved her and I didn't want to make things difficult for him. So I told her, "Fine, I won't attend your wedding. I hope you have a great time with my brother and the rest of my family." April just ignored me and asked me to leave, so I left. I had accepted things for what it was, even though I wanted to fight with her. However, when my brother found out from the rest of my family that April had uninvited me, he was understandably upset. He called me to ask for an explanation, and I told him everything that had happened between us. After that, I'm not sure exactly what transpired between April and my brother, but he seemed to have confronted her about it privately, and I guess things must have not gone well. Because this week, my brother announced to me and the rest of our family that the wedding was off. We were in shock. He was refusing to marry her altogether. Now I feel terrible because my family kind of blames me for this outcome. They are saying it's my fault for refusing to make minor adjustments for April. They believe that by refusing to compromise on certain things, I might have contributed to the tension that led to their fallout. It's frustrating because from my perspective, April had been treating me poorly for months and I don't feel like those issues were minor at all. But in their eyes, they think a little more flexibility on my part could have prevented this entire situation. Update 1. To clarify, my family is supportive of me and understands that April has been hard on me for months. However, they do feel that I could have handled things differently, like giving in to basically all her demands. They think because my brother is so protective of me, he might have reacted a little bit too harsh towards April, which might have contributed to the cancellation of your wedding. It doesn't help that April's family has been reaching out to us and blaming me also for the fiasco. I plan on sitting down with my brother and having a more detailed discussion on this to understand where his mind is at. Update 2. It has been a few weeks now since my brother announced that he was canceling his wedding to April, and the reality of the situation has begun to sink in. It feels surreal to think about how quickly everything has changed. In the beginning, I was hopeful that things would resolve themselves and that my brother would find a way to reconcile with April. But as the days turned into weeks, it became increasingly clear that their relationship was beyond repair and he wanted nothing to do with her anymore. I did talk to my brother about why he suddenly called off the wedding. It turns out that April said a lot more nasty things about me and our parents during their fight. My brother confessed that April has always exhibited some controlling behavior towards him in the past, but he had always sort of brushed it off. However, after he heard from me that she had been bullying me for months with her relentless demands, her need to control every detail of the wedding, and her utter disregard for my feelings, he realized that she was actually a very mean person who refused to ever hold herself accountable. Somehow she always acted like she was superior to others because of her beliefs, and he felt this was something he couldn't just ignore any longer. So he walked out of their relationship. Meanwhile, April has continued to text me and leave multiple voicemails accusing me of ruining her future. In the voicemails, she's practically screaming at me, saying that I will be punished for my bad deeds. I'm thinking of blocking her, especially now that I'm certain my brother will never get back together with her. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my brother canceled his wedding. Our parents, who initially blamed me for the situation, have let this matter go. At first, they thought I might have overreacted or contributed to the tension between April and my brother. But when I sat them down and made them listen to the voicemails and read through the series of messages April sent before I decided to block her, their perception of her completely changed. They were genuinely shocked, unable to reconcile how someone they had always seen as this sweet, soft-spoken girl could be so cruel and vindictive in private. Needless to say, they now dislike her and are happy with my brother's decision. Since then, they've shown more compassion for my brother's feelings as they understand that his happiness matters more than any wedding plans. In fact, they're not just supportive of him these days, they're relieved that he made the decision to cut ties with someone who clearly harbored such negativity. Meanwhile, my brother is doing just fine. He does miss April from time to time, but ultimately, he feels what he did was for the best. He understands that staying together would have likely led to more heartache and disputes for both of them in the long run. My brother and I have maintained a close relationship, just as we always have, and I'm grateful that this whole situation didn't damage our bond. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Mill gave me an apron at my SS party and made fun of my mom for being a former maid. My fiancée grabbed the mic and embarrassed her, so she cried and ran out the door. So, a few weeks ago, I, 25F, got engaged to my fiancé, Mike, 25M, after almost 7 years of dating. I've always gotten along with his family, except for his mother. My future mother-in-law, Sydney, has never been nice to me, and I know the reason. She doesn't think that I come from the kind of family that she would approve of. It's as simple as that. Mike's family is quite rich and his mother is a total snob, so she has spent most of her time looking down on me whenever we have met. I have tried to be pleasant to her, but it has never mattered, so now I just keep my distance from her, and so does Mike. Neither of us is very confrontational in nature, so we mostly just let things go because it's always just really petty behavior on her part and it's not worth bringing up. But a few days ago, something happened at my sister-in-law's party, and I think after this, we cannot go back to pretending that everything is fine for the sake of keeping everything peaceful in the family. My future sister-in-law, Jess, just turned 21 a few days back, and her father decided to throw a huge party for her. So a lot of people were invited to the party, including my mother, which is why the incident was all the more hurtful because it was quite humiliating for her. We attended the party after work, so a lot of people were already there by the time we showed up. My mother showed up a couple of minutes after we did, and once she was there, Sydney called out to me and asked me and my mother to come to her so she could introduce us to all her friends and a couple of other people. I thought that was really fishy because she was being extra sweet to me, and I guess even Mike felt that, so he stood with me while we were being introduced to a lot of people we didn't know. And then, all of a sudden, Sydney told me that she wanted to officially welcome me into the family with a gift, because she hadn't been able to present me with something after the engagement because it was a surprise. For a second, I honestly thought that she was going to give me something nice because maybe she was turning over a new leaf and finally coming to accept me because it had been 7 years since I had been with her son. I was unfortunately disappointed because when she handed me the gift and told me to unwrap it, which I did, I then found an apron inside it. I was really confused and it showed on my face since I'm not a very good cook and neither am I passionate about it. So I couldn't understand why she would give me an apron, And then she clarified everything by saying that now it was time for me to get to work because she was sure that my waitress mother must have taught me well. For context, I've been raised by a single mother, and for the longest time she had been a waitress. My father had walked out on us before I was even born and had never been part of the picture. He hadn't even sent any child support, and my grandparents could afford to babysit me occasionally, but they couldn't afford to take care of us financially. So my mom had to drop out of college in her final year because she just couldn't afford it, and she started working random jobs just to be able to support the two of us. Waitressing was one of those jobs, and until I was in middle school, she was a waitress. After that, she started working in sales, and that paid decently enough, so she stuck to that. My mother and I know how difficult it has been for us in the past, and her struggle is not something that I'm ashamed of. It's something that I'm really, really proud of because in spite of everything, she has never let me feel like I don't have enough. I don't come from a family that has generational wealth like Mike does, and I don't mind it either because I know that whatever values my mom has instilled in me are good enough for me, and I would never be ashamed of the fact that she had been a waitress in the past. But in the context of the party, I knew that Sydney's only intention was to humiliate me and my mom, so I couldn't say anything. I just froze on the spot, and literally everybody else went silent as well because it was so awkward and they probably felt sorry for us. But I didn't need to worry because within a couple of seconds, Mike came to my rescue. Because he could see that my mother was on the verge of tears and I had just frozen. Unlike his mother though, he did not intend on humiliating her in front of just a couple of people. He decided to grab the mic from the karaoke setup nearby and called attention to himself so he could propose a toast. That was distracting enough for everyone, and soon enough all eyes were on him. Then he started talking about how wonderful it was of his father to have thrown such an extravagant party for his daughter's 21st birthday, and said that maybe a decade ago, his parents wouldn't even have been able to imagine throwing a party like this, and it was all thanks to Sydney and her family. That was shocking for everyone, and then it got worse because he started talking about how almost 10 years back, Sydney's parents, his grandparents, had declared bankruptcy and had started completely relying on his dad to help them get back on their feet. It had been a really difficult time for everyone, and while their entire family pretend that none of this ever happened, it was the truth. He said that back then, even though my father-in-law had been doing reasonably well running his father's business, it was still a huge task to support everyone, especially because at the time my father-in-law was planning on starting his own company so he could work independently. But he had to postpone that indefinitely since that would be a huge investment, and because Sydney's parents were relying on him for financial support, he had to put his ambitions on hold. The biggest problem was that Sydney's parents were not even willing to compromise on their lifestyle, and worst of all, they pretended like all the money that they were spending was their own. They had been running their own business for a really long time, and the only reason they had gone bankrupt was because of their financial irresponsibility and refusal to adjust to the times, which they did not want to admit to the rest of the world. So they pretended like everything was fine, and that's how nobody had any idea that it was my father-in-law who had been supporting Sydney's parents all along. She couldn't have done it herself because she got married right after college and has never worked a day in her life. She made sure that she didn't have to, so she could live the same kind of life she had been used to while staying with her parents without ever working for it. He also said that until their very last breath in the past few years, his maternal grandparents had been living off of his father's money, and neither she nor anybody else ever spoke of it. The only reason he was bringing it up now was because he wanted his mother to realize how absolutely hypocritical it was to try and demean me for not coming from a financially stable background and constantly implying that I was with him for the money when she herself was no less than a gold digger. He went on to say that at least my mother had been an honest and hardworking woman and made a life for herself. Not only had she supported herself, she had also raised me and been there for her parents without any help from anyone. And Sydney, on the other hand, in spite of having all the resources in the world, she and her parents still ended up relying on his father for money, and that's what she's doing even now. He reminded her that if my dad decided to leave for one day, she would be left with absolutely nothing and would have to rely on alimony, which she didn't even deserve because it's not like she had done a day of hard work in her life. He and his sister had been practically raised by their nannies and babysitters, and all the other household chores and work were taken care of by the staff. All she had done so far was go on expensive shopping sprees with her husband's money and visit exotic locations. All thanks to her husband and his hard work. He ended his speech by saying that giving me that apron as a present to humiliate me and bringing up how my mom used to be a waitress is not the dish she thinks it is. It's honestly just a pathetic attempt to put good people down, and he said that he was ashamed that she was his mother, just like she should be ashamed of her parents and herself. Just like they had left her nothing in the end, she was also not going to be able to leave me absolutely nothing. As for my mom, even if she wouldn't be able to leave me anything significant financially, at least I would have all the memories of good times that I have spent with her, the values and other lessons that she has taught me, and that will be more than anything that Sydney has to offer. Then he grabbed my hand and asked my mom to accompany us and walked out. None of us even said anything until we were in the car. And then my mom finally broke down and started thanking him. Even then, I couldn't say anything. I could only just cry because I was so happy with the way he had stood up for me and my mother, and I just knew that I had made the right decision by choosing to marry him. To be honest, I personally think it was a great day for us, and when we went back home after dropping my mom at her place, he actually even apologized for not standing up to his mother earlier because he thought that if he had done so, she wouldn't have had the audacity to act like this and think that she would get away with it. But I don't blame him. If I had been in his place, even I wouldn't have wanted to pick fights with somebody I would have to see frequently, especially regarding petty things. Her attitude towards me had always been bad, but it had never actually hurt me, and since I never cared about it, none of us took it seriously either. Nobody could have seen something like this coming because it was just ridiculously disrespectful. Besides, I had mentioned in the beginning itself that I had always had a good relationship with the rest of his family, so his father and sister had never been a problem for me. So fighting with her would have made family dinners unnecessarily awkward for everyone, and that's why we had been avoiding it so far. But now, even the rest of the family seems to be against us because it has been a couple of days since the party, and while Sydney hasn't tried to reach out to us at all, his dad and Jess have sent us several messages, and we have had a lot of heated arguments on the phone about whatever happened at the party. We later found out from Jess that because of his toast, Sydney had felt so humiliated that she had ended up sobbing hysterically and running out of the house so she could stay away from everyone for a couple of minutes right after we left. I have basically mentioned every little thing that Mike had said in his speech as far as I can remember. I've tried to include all the details so you guys can make an informed decision about whether we are in the wrong in this situation or not. Because right now, even though Sydney is not speaking to us, my father-in-law says that the speech that had been made was completely unnecessary, and if we had been offended, we should have just left the party that instant to cool off, or we should have said something to Sydney personally instead of making a public speech about things that are very personal to the family. He told us that he agreed that whatever Sydney had done had been quite messed up, and he had no idea that she was planning on doing something like that because otherwise, he would have definitely tried to stop her. But after that, Mike's reaction had been a little extreme, and the only reason that he thinks so is because he had a proper audience listening to him, and apparently that was taking it way too far. Jess has also told us that his mother is very upset and has been breaking down at the slightest things ever since the day of the party because she feels humiliated. Mostly because there was a great deal that Mike had said about her parents, and she thought that it was really disrespectful because both of them had passed away and it's not like they could defend themselves anymore. She also thinks that the speech was quite ungrateful because it made her sound like a terrible mother, even though everything that Mike had said was actually true. She had hardly ever been there for her children, and they did have a good few memories as a family. It doesn't mean that she can deny everything else. Jess also agrees that it was the truth, but she just thinks that there was no need for him to bring it up publicly like that. And basically, what I'm getting from everything that his father and Jess have been fighting with us so far about is that they are only offended because Mike decided to make that speech in front of so many people. But Mike and I believe that we had put up with her stupid remark, and her insinuation that I was only with Mike because I was a gold digger had gone out of hand. We had let a lot of things go in the past because we did not want to make a whole thing out of it, but some things cannot be left unanswered, and this was one of those things. So while both Mike and I do think that everything that had been mentioned in the speech had definitely been quite personal for the family, it had to be said. Also, it's not like Sydney herself had thought twice before insulting my mother and me, so we don't really feel bad for humiliating her and her parents. I think it's fair enough, but obviously, Mike's father and sister do not agree, and we have been fighting about it a lot. I just want a solution to all of this, and I'm really tired of going back and forth. So I'm here to ask for you guys' opinion. Are we the a-holes for making a speech and publicly humiliating my future mother-in-law after she tried to make fun of my mom for being a waitress in the past? Date 1. Hello Reddit. First of all, thank you so much for all the comments. A lot of you took out time to help us out, and I really appreciate that. Most people were conflicted about whether we did the right thing or not, and honestly, it took us a really long time to decide how to move forward as well. In the end, after taking advice from our friends and my mom, we decided that we were going to tell Mike's father and sister that we were sorry for spilling the beans on the family and personal affairs, but we were not going to be apologizing to his mother. After all, even they had acknowledged the fact that whatever Sydney had done was incredibly messed up. We do think that we shouldn't have brought up such personal things in front of so many people and spoken about it in detail, especially since Mike's father was not comfortable with it. Whatever Sydney had done, it was not right, and they did not approve of it anyway, so I guess it was not necessary for us to have dragged them into our speech. For that, we were ready to apologize, guys, but not for anything else. Mike's family has always been very nice to me, so I don't mind acknowledging the fact that maybe certain things that they did not want people to know should not have been discussed in public without their consent. Apart from that, we don't think we have anything to apologize for because so far, even Sydney hasn't apologized to us. I don't even care if she doesn't apologize to me, but she definitely needs to apologize to my mother because I can understand she doesn't like me, but my mother has been nothing but kind to everyone. She has treated Mike like her own son. She did not deserve that. So far, Mike's family has always stood up for me and tried to defend me in subtle ways whenever Sydney would become a little too much to handle. And I would really expect them to do the same this time because this is when it really counts. It has been a little over a week since the incident at the party, and for the past couple of days we haven't exactly been on speaking terms with Mike's family, but in a couple of hours we are going to send an email to them acknowledging whatever I mentioned in this post, and then we'll just see what they have to say about it. Anyway, now that the main thing is out of the way, I guess I would need to address some things that you guys were confused about in the comments of my original post. I noticed that a lot of people were very confused by the fact that I was using the word "we" for a speech that only Mike had made. I didn't think that it would matter, so I did not bother to explain, but anyway, I guess I have to explain that I don't look at us as separate entities in this situation. We are one unit here, and that is why I've been using "we." Now coming to the second thing. Why did Sydney's parents never start working again, and why did they have to rely on my father-in-law for the rest of their lives after their business flopped? I don't think I can answer that. I had only known them for a couple of years, and even then, I hadn't been particularly close to them, so I couldn't have known how they were as people. My experience with them hadn't been particularly nice anyway, since they were just like Sydney, snobbish and elitist. So they had been very curt with me, and before I could get to know them properly, both of them passed away within a few years of each other. What I did know, though, was that both of them came from rich business families and inherited a lot of money, with which they started their own company. Initially, they did really well, but I guess after a while they started losing their touch, and that's why they went bankrupt. Instead of depending on their son-in-law for a couple of years, they became totally dependent on him forever and decided that they were just never going to work again. Nobody asked them why, so we don't know. I myself was not aware of this until the incident at the party because Mike's family doesn't really like talking about this. And so even he hasn't spoken about it before this. He explained to me that it had been drilled into his head by everyone that this was something that should not be discussed in public, so he had kept his mouth shut even around me. I couldn't understand why he had done that, so I did not push it. So anyway, we are not really sure why Sydney's parents didn't just start working again. They probably didn't think it was necessary because as long as they had somebody to support them and they could afford their lifestyle, it didn't matter to them how they were getting that money. My father-in-law never let his in-laws find out that it had taken a toll on him initially, that he had to even put his own dreams on hold for their sake, so they had nothing to worry about. And just judging by how Sydney has turned out, I'm guessing they probably wouldn't have cared anyway. But well, that's none of my business. Update 2. So, 2 days ago, I had posted an update here saying that Mike and I were going to send an email to his father and sister explaining everything. You can find it all in my last update. Anyway, we did not hear from them after that until a couple of hours ago, and we have mixed feelings about what they said. Jess had written back to us on behalf of both her and her father, and she told us that she could understand that things had reached a breaking point for both of us and that's why Mike had done something so extreme, but that didn't change the fact that it was still wrong. Just acknowledging it and apologizing for it half-heartedly did not make it right because now everybody in the family knew about their drama, which they had managed to keep a secret for the longest time. They said that they could understand our position, But it was still unfair for them because now it was Mike's father and Sydney that people were all gossiping about. So in a way, they believed that Mike had just messed up his own family's reputation while trying to defend my honor or whatever, and they thought that our apology seemed pretty half-hearted since apparently we are just sorry that they feel bad about the situation, not that we did something like this in the first place. I don't think they have a valid point there, so I don't know how to feel about that. But the one thing that all of us can agree on is the fact that Sydney was totally wrong, and even in the email they acknowledged that. They said that they had reflected on the situation for the past couple of days and had told Sydney that she needed to apologize to us and that constantly pretending to be the victim was not going to work. And her being upset that Mike spoke about her parents like that and called her out in public, it's just plain hypocritical because she was trying to do the exact same thing by humiliating me and my mom and for no reason other than the fact that she just didn't like us. So if she couldn't take it, she shouldn't have dished it out either. Besides, everyone knows that whatever Mike had said in his speech was true, so she can't even deny that. Now she's not speaking to them either, and she's basically completely on her own. I'm glad that they are not siding with her, but apart from that, that email is kind of confusing for us on an emotional level right now. Mike and I don't know how to react to it, so we think we are going to respond a couple of days later after giving it some thought. In the meantime, if anybody has any advice, they are welcome to share it with us in the comments. Thank you guys. Update 3. Hey Reddit, so it has been more than 2 weeks since we last spoke to Mike's family. In my last update, I mentioned that we had received a reply to the email that we had sent and weren't entirely happy with it. We had mixed feelings about it, so we took our time and replied to them after 4 days telling them that we were sorry that we had offended them by speaking about something that they did not want other people to know, but we were not sorry for having done it. In case anybody finds that confusing, we meant to tell them that we were just sorry that they felt bad. But we were not going to apologize for what we did because at some point we had to stand up for ourselves, and if that happened at the cost of offending Mike's father and Jess, then so be it. Besides, I could understand that they wanted to keep certain things private, but even if it did go out, it's not like they were being portrayed negatively. In my opinion, we had said nothing bad about them, and it had been all against Sydney, so it was fair enough. We were justified in our own right, and even they were not wrong, so the only solution that Mike and I could think of, at least, was to drop this and move on. We could have just agreed to disagree, but Mike's father was not happy with that. We spoke on the phone a couple of days after that email, and when we told him all of this, he got really mad and said that if we did not think that we had anything to apologize for, then he had nothing to say to us anymore. Both of us are quite disappointed by that because we had believed that he would try to move past this, but after he said that, we did not try to reach out to him again because even though we were upset, there was not much that we could say, and we were definitely not going to be apologetic for what we had done. We had to stand up for ourselves, and we are not going to back down. About 2 days after that, we spoke to Jess, and she told us that Mike's father was very unhappy with how the situation had turned out. To add to it, even Sydney has left home so she could go and stay with her sister for a couple of days because she needs a change of scenery since apparently everything has become way too toxic for her to handle. Nobody is too worried about that, though, since we know that she's going to come back. Even during our conversation with Jess, we thought that we would be able to patch things up with her, but she said that she would like to remain in low contact for a couple of weeks until everything has cooled off. So, well, that's what we're doing right now. It's kind of sad that his family is acting like this, but so far, he has been acting like it doesn't affect him. I know it does, though, and I really want them to be able to understand him, so I hope they reach back out to him as soon as possible so he doesn't have to feel this way. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Update 4. Hey, so it has been over a month since my last update, and last week his family finally reached out to him again. By his family, I'm only referring to his father and his sister because obviously, his mother is too proud to acknowledge that she has even made a mistake, but everybody in the family knows that by now, so we are dealing with it by just ignoring her. We hadn't been on speaking terms for quite some time, but then last week, Mike's father just called him up and invited us over for dinner so we could talk things out. We decided to go, and Sydney was there. Surprisingly, she seemed just as shocked to see us as well, but as soon as she realized that it was us, she decided to make a face and leave the room. Mike's father told us to ignore her because, well, what else could we have done? Anyway, after that, we had dinner with his family, and his father apologized for his behavior, saying that maybe he had just been taking everything a little too seriously. He told us that he had done some serious introspection over the past couple of weeks and realized that we were right. None of us were wrong in our respective places, and the best thing that we could do to deal with the situation was just move on from it. So now he was willing to do that because he had realized that this was just not worth losing his relationship with his son over. Besides, Mike and I are getting married soon, and he wants to be involved, so this passive-aggressive silent treatment is not something that he wants to have anymore. Jess basically just seconded everything that her father said, and it didn't take us much time to sort things out after that. Right now, we have talked it out, and we have decided to let bygones be bygones. The bottom line is that they want us in their lives, and we want them in ours, so we are letting the past go. As for Sydney, she can do whatever she wants. It doesn't concern any of us anymore. We don't even expect an apology from her anymore because either way, she's not going to be invited to the wedding, so it doesn't make a difference. But I'm happy that we were able to make it right with the rest of his family, and I'm only just waiting to get married to Mike now. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Am I the asshole for wearing an over-the-top outfit to my friend's birthday party and overshadowing the host? Before I begin, English is not my first language, so apologies for typos, bad grammar, and punctuation. I'm also on mobile and using a throwaway just in case. So, last Friday night, my 24M friend, we'll call him Peter, celebrated his 28th birthday. His coworker, that is what he refers to her as, April, offered to organize and host the party. The dress code was, as she put it, your go best. Peter loves anything morbid and macabre, so it would fit his taste perfectly. Now, I prioritize comfort over looks, which leaves me dressing mostly in scrubs at work or sweats and hoodies when I'm out and about. Hence, April decided to remind me multiple times, in an increasingly condescending tone, to follow the dress code. So I did just that. I wore a black velvet trouser and waistcoat set with a white 18th century men's shirt. A pirate shirt, if you will. All of these items I made completely myself, from drafting the patterns to sewing the shirt completely by hand and adding an embroidered moth across the back of the waistcoat. Now, to the party itself. I ended up arriving later than most people due to being held up at work longer than expected. I warned both Peter and April about it. Peter said it was no problem at all, but I better show up, and April left me on read. So I arrived 40 minutes late, greeted April, congratulated Peter, and gave him his gift. Mocktails were drunk and pleasantries were exchanged. Over the course of the night, I got a lot of compliments on my outfit, and my craft skills were a topic of conversation several times over the evening. It also didn't really help that when someone asked me where I got the suit or shirt from, Peter would loudly tell them all about how I made everything myself. I remember being spun around a couple of times so people could look at the embroidery on the back. Everyone had a good time, or so I thought. Over the weekend, April and her friends ended up bombarding my phone and any social media that they could find with absolutely nasty messages. How I was an attention seeker, how desperate I came across, how I absolutely ruined the party April had been planning for weeks. How dare I steal attention away and overshadow Peter and April? You get the idea. I feel like I'm going a bit insane. Overshadowing anybody was never my intention, especially my friend at his own party, and I don't think that I did. But all of these comments are making me rethink my choices. So, am I the asshole here? I really need some outside perspective. Relevant comments. Commenter: Peter is behind this. OP: I doubt that's the case. I have known the guy for 10+ years, and he never had a problem with people overshadowing him. He is not insecure, and if he's got a problem with someone's actions, he'll say it. He wouldn't send his coworkers' girlfriends to harass a person on his behalf. Commenter: NTA. April has a thing for Peter and sees you as a threat. She's gonna find ways to criticize you and tear you down no matter what you do. OP. I guess it also didn't help that Peter kept his hand on my back for most of the evening, and when he got absolutely wasted, put his face in my hair. Commenter: So maybe it's not just April's imagination that you're a threat to her attempts to connect with Peter. OP. I think the biggest threat is Peter being aromantic/asexual and the way April behaves, not me. Commenter: Could he possibly be demiromantic? Because Peter's behavior that you're describing presents as a little bit more than platonic. Keeping his arm around you, smelling your hair, those are often actions, though not exclusively, of course, exhibited by people towards a paramour or crush of some degree. And yes, April is the problem. OP. According to him, he is aromantic/asexual, and he wasn't smelling my hair, more like rubbing his face on the top of my head. He says it's because he likes how my hair feels. He plays with my hair often enough, and when he gets a little too drunk, he face plants into it. Though he did it mostly back when we were in uni. Knowing him, it could just be a texture thing. Others liking the outfit. At some point, I ended up with like 4 very drunk people rubbing the moth's body. I made it from faux fur, and by extension my back with their fingers. Was a weird experience, to say the least. The outfit. I had help when it came to drafting the suit from someone who actually knows what they are doing, lol. The shirt was made from a bunch of squares, so no problems there. The embroidery is all split stitches and faux fur for the body of the moth. I really made it sound much more impressive than it is. OP is voted NTA. Update. This morning, I showed Peter the post and all of the messages from April and company. Never heard him be this angry. Said he'll deal with them. Turns out April is a pathological liar and had been telling everyone in the office that Peter and her are in a relationship but are keeping it low-key. She also was taking pictures of him every time she walked by his office and showing them to her friends as proof, so her friends thought that I was trying to steal her man. They aren't even co-workers. She just greets clients at the front desk at the firm Peter works at. Peter ripped her a new one. Their boss, April's uncle, ripped her a new one. The coworker she lied to ripped her a new one. April ended up throwing a tantrum, and the police were called. The results? April is currently on a 48-hour hold. Peter is moving to work from home full-time. I apologized to April's uncle, mom, and a few friends and coworkers. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My wife just passed away. My father told me to marry another woman, just like he did. This started a war between us. I, 26 male, lost my wife, Annie, over a year ago when our 2 children were only 18 months and 4 years old. She was only 25. Annie and I had 2 kids who were barely 18 months and 4 years old at the time, almost the exact age I was when I lost my mom. The parallel was chilling, and it forced me to confront the full circle my life had taken. I was only 5 when my mom passed away. It's one of those memories that isn't just a single moment. It's like a shadow that stretched long over my childhood. Growing up, everything seemed a bit grayer, a bit more muted without her. The house was quieter, and Dad was always busy trying to fill the void her absence left in every corner of our life. He did his best, but you could tell he was just as lost in grief as I was, even though he tried to hide it behind long hours at work and forced smiles at dinner. I remember feeling perpetually confused. 2. Why my mom? Why our family? Friends would talk about their moms, their plans for Mother's Day, and it felt like living in a world where everyone else had something precious that I had lost. Birthdays and holidays were the hardest. Dad tried, he really did, but there's a particular kind of emptiness that comes from missing a person who was supposed to be there for those moments. As I grew older, that confusion turned into a deep-seated fear of loss, clinging too tightly to relationships or shying away from them entirely to avoid the potential heartbreak. It wasn't until much later in my own adult relationships that I began to understand the depth of my fear. Therapy helped. Talking about her, about the memories and the pain, made it more bearable. Losing Mom so young fundamentally shaped who I am. It made me more empathetic towards others' pain, more aware of the fragility of life. Back then, the world seemed suddenly bigger and more intimidating without my mom. Even though I was too young to comprehend all the ways her passing would impact me, I felt her absence in every part of my daily life. There was an emptiness at home, a silence that wasn't just about the lack of her voice, but about the missing layer of love and security she represented. Annie always had this vivid memory of her dad, how he'd lift her high above his head and make her feel like she could touch the clouds. She was just 6 when he was taken from her, swept away by a sudden illness that none of us were ready to face. That loss carved a deep, aching void in her life, one that shaped her in ways she only sometimes talked about. She grew up determined to be the pillar her dad couldn't be for her, to build a fortress of love for our kids that nothing could penetrate, not even death. But life, as it often does, had other plans. It was a crisp fall morning, much like any other, except Annie wasn't feeling well. We thought little of it at first, a passing bug we hoped. But it turned out to be much more serious. Within months, we were grappling with a reality that mirrored her deepest fears. Annie was diagnosed with a terminal illness, the kind that sneaks up silently but quickly overwhelms. In those final months, Annie's resolve to make lasting memories with our kids became everything. Every day, despite her waning strength, she'd spend time with them, reading stories, playing games, or just holding them close, embedding her presence in their lives in ways she hoped would be indelible. She often spoke to me late at night, her voice a mixture of determination and despair, about her need to leave a legacy of love for them, to be there in their hearts and minds even when she could no longer be there in person. She wanted so desperately to break the cycle of loss that had shadowed her childhood, to give our kids the stable, loving foundation she had lost so early on. Her biggest fear was repeating history, leaving our kids with the same hollow memories and unanswerable questions she had struggled with. Watching Annie with our children, I saw the lengths she went to imprint her love on their young lives. She would record videos for them, leave little notes in unexpected places, and create traditions that could carry on in her absence. Her creativity in weaving these threads of connection was both inspiring and heart-wrenching. When she passed, the loss was monumental, echoing the emptiness of her own childhood, but also filled with the richness of the love she had poured into every moment with them. Annie had always had a clear vision of her own funeral. Unusual as that might sound, it was something we talked about occasionally, those strange, somber discussions that unexpectedly pop up and linger between a couple. She wanted it to be more a celebration of her life than a mourning of her death. "Don't make it all doom and gloom," she'd say, half joking but serious about the essence of her wishes. "Make it a day where everyone can remember the happy times, with lots of flowers and maybe even some fireworks." When it happened, I was plunged into a deep grief that was hard to navigate, filled with the pain of loss, but also the duty to honor her final wishes. The day of her funeral arrived on a bright and clear morning, which felt almost offensive in the context of our loss, yet fitting for the type of farewell she had envisioned. The service was held at our local church, a place she had chosen not just for its spiritual significance, but also for its beautiful stained glass windows and the way the sunlight danced through them in the mornings. It was here, under the vivid colors cast by the morning light, that friends and family gathered, not in black, but in bright colors as she had requested. Flowers adorned every surface, wildflowers, her favorite, in vibrant hues of blues, yellows, and reds, creating a tapestry of color that transformed the usually somber space into one that was alive with remembrance and love. The air was filled with her favorite music, a mix of classic rock and folk tunes, songs that had soundtracked our life together. Each melody stirred memories, bringing smiles even through the tears. After the service, we moved to a nearby park, another place Annie loved. It was here that the atmosphere lightened as people shared their stories about Annie. Her quirks, her laugh, her boundless energy. Felt like she was there with us, in the laughter and the shared memories. As the sun began to set, we prepared for the final act of the day, the fireworks. It was an unconventional choice, but it was exactly what she had wanted. As the first rocket shot into the sky, bursting into a cascade of color, it felt like a release, a letting go of some of the sorrow and a celebration of a spirit too vibrant to ever be really gone. Each explosion of light was a reminder of her vibrant life, a punctuating finale that she would have loved. Now, as I watch our children grow, I see Annie's influence in their resilience, their laughter, and even in their tears. They talk about her often, recalling moments I didn't even realize they remembered. It's clear that while death took Annie away too soon, her efforts to be a present, loving force in their lives didn't go in vain. She lives on through them, through the stories we share and the love we keep alive. As their father, my role has evolved to not just nurturing them, but also preserving the essence of what Annie wanted for them. A sense of security, love, and the knowledge that they were and always will be cherished, no matter what life throws our way. Now, as I watch my own children, I see that same confusion and loss reflected in their eyes. They look for Annie in simple moments, when they accomplish something small, like tying their shoelaces, or when they need comfort after a bad dream. I know those feelings. I live them, It's a reminder of how deeply a child feels the absence of a parent, often in ways they can't fully express. This shared experience has deepened my empathy and understanding of my children's emotions. I often find myself navigating their grief while managing my own, trying to be the rock that they can lean on. It's not just about providing for them materially, but ensuring they feel safe and loved, that they have space to miss their mom without feeling like they need to hide their grief. Their journey through loss has also reshaped my approach to parenting. I'm more patient, more attuned to the unspoken parts of their sadness, and more proactive in addressing our emotional health as a family. We talk about Annie often, keeping her memory alive not as a shadow that hangs over us, but as a light that continues to guide us. I strive to be present in a way I felt my dad struggled to be after my mom died. Seeing my children cope with their loss, I understand the long road ahead of them. I know the challenges they'll face as they grow up without their mom, but I also see their resilience, and it gives me hope. It reminds me that while the pain of loss never fully disappears, it can be woven into the fabric of our lives, making us stronger and more connected to each other. I've promised myself to be there for them, to help them navigate this journey, and to ensure they never doubt they are loved, both by their mom, whose love continues beyond her absence, and by me, who stands with them every step of the way. After my mom passed away, the house felt suspended in time, with remnants of her life tucked into every corner. Her clothes still hung in the closet, her books remained on the shelves, and the air carried the gentle hint of her perfume. This stillness, this preserved world of hers, was abruptly disrupted when my dad announced he was remarrying. It was barely a year since we'd lost her, and the news fell on me like a cold wave. Ellen moved in shortly after their wedding. She brought with her boxes filled with new items, new routines, and a new presence that seemed to flood the spaces my mom had once inhabited. Her attempts at reorganizing the house, from rearranging the living room to replacing the curtains my mom had chosen, felt less like mere changes and more like erasures of the life we had lived. Ellen was kind, or at least she tried to be. She would cook meals she thought I would enjoy and make small talk, attempting to bridge the gap between us. However, her efforts felt forced. Each kind gesture, no matter how well-intended, felt like an intrusion, as if she was trying to stitch herself into the fabric of a family portrait where she didn't quite belong. I resisted, not out of spite for her as a person, but out of a deep-seated loyalty to my mom's memory and a child's grief that clung stubbornly to the past. The situation at home grew tense. My reactions to Ellen's changes ranged from silent withdrawal to outright defiance. I would put things back where Mom had left them, insist on using the same old dishes instead of the new ones Ellen brought, and avoid spending time in the newly redecorated spaces. I missed the familiarity of my old life, the comfort of knowing every corner held a piece of my mom. My dad, caught between his attempt to move forward and his child's resistance, often became frustrated. Arguments became more frequent. He would accuse me of being unreasonable, of not giving Ellen a fair chance. I saw it differently. I felt he was erasing Mom's legacy, pushing me to forget rather than remember. One particularly heated evening, my dad snapped after finding me rearranging the living room to its original state. "We can't live in a museum," he yelled. "We have to move on. You have to move on." But how could I move on? Mom's shadow was in every laughter that had echoed through these rooms, in every step I took around the furniture she had carefully chosen, in every scent that lingered. The house felt increasingly like a battleground, where every alteration to its old state felt like a loss, a reminder of how swiftly and ruthlessly life could change. Ellen, caught in the middle, gradually stopped trying so hard to win me over, retreating instead into whatever peace she could find with my dad. During those initial months after Ellen moved in, the atmosphere in our home became increasingly strained. I was still grappling with the loss of my mom, often finding solace in old photos and mementos that kept her memory alive. My vulnerability and frequent bouts of tears were a stark reminder of the raw pain that lingered in our home. It was during this time that Dad's demeanor towards me shifted drastically. The few times I showed vulnerability or cried for Mom, he reacted not with comfort, but with frustration. He would yell, telling me to grow up and stop crying. It was clear he was grappling with his own pain, but his approach left me feeling abandoned in my grief. One night, after finding me crying in my room with a picture of Mom, "Enough!" he barked, his voice echoing against the walls. "You need to grow up and stop crying all the time. Life has to move on." His words, meant to push me towards resilience, felt more like a dismissal of my grief. I looked up at him, my heart sinking. "I miss her, Dad." I managed to choke out, the words barely a whisper. "Why can't you just let me miss her?" His next words were like a cold slap. "I'm happier now, and you should be too. I love Ellen more than I ever loved your mom." He declared it with a harsh certainty that seemed to seal the growing gap between us. The room fell silent, save for the quiet sobs that I couldn't hold back. Those words, harsh and raw, sliced through the fragile thread of understanding that had tethered us. I felt not just the loss of my mom, but also the creeping loss of my dad, who was now a stranger, driven by his own grief and newfound happiness. Those words, harsh and raw, cut deeply, wounding me more than the tears I shed for Mom. As the years passed, the emotional distance grew. Dad was increasingly absent, not just physically but emotionally. My cries for attention, for the affection I missed so desperately, went unanswered. His priorities had shifted, and I felt sidelined, an unwelcome reminder of a past he wanted to forget. Ellen, for all her efforts, could never bridge the gap between Dad and me. It felt like a betrayal, not just of Mom's memory, but of the father-son bond we should have had. Feeling abandoned and misunderstood, I withdrew into myself. The isolation at home led me to seek solace elsewhere. In books, in school activities, anywhere I could find a semblance of the care and attention I lacked at home. But the impact of those formative years lingered. I harbored a deep-seated mistrust for relationships, fearful of being left behind again, of loving someone who might one day decide I wasn't worth sticking around for. As an adult, looking back, I can see that Dad was dealing with his grief in his own flawed way, but the understanding of his pain does little to soothe the resentment and hurt of a child who felt left behind. Now, facing my own challenges as a widower, I'm determined to be the father to my children that I needed when I was their age. One who is present, supportive, and unconditionally loving, no matter what life throws our way. But after Annie died, my dad, he reached out to tell me he hoped I understood him better and cut him some slack for everything. I didn't respond to him at the time because I was in the most immediate sense of grief. Still today, it's still raw, but I'm in therapy to try and find peace in my life. He reached out to me a few more times, and he apologized for his initial message. We met up a few days ago per his request. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral place that seemed suitable for what was already a tense discussion waiting to unfold. As I sat across from him, still wearing my wedding ring, a stark symbol of my ongoing grief, it didn't take long for the conversation to veer into uncomfortable territory. He noticed the ring almost immediately and took it as a cue to voice his thoughts on moving forward. "You can't keep living in the past," he said. "It's time to think about your future. Maybe start meeting people again." I clenched my jaw, feeling the old frustration simmer. I asked him to drop the subject, but he pressed on, perhaps thinking that pushing me was for my own good. That's when he brought up his own past, his quick remarriage after my mom's death. He explained, not for the first time but certainly in the most explicit way, how his new wife had brought him happiness, something he thought was impossible after Mom. "I needed that, and I think you do too," he said earnestly. "I thought you'd understand by now, especially with the kids needing a mother figure." His words stung sharply. It wasn't just the suggestion that I replace Annie, but the implication that my grief was somehow a selfish indulgence that I should move past for the sake of the kids. He went further, saying that he hoped I would eventually see the benefit of his choices, that I would stop holding on to my resentment and realize that embracing someone new wasn't a betrayal of my late wife. I told him firmly, "It doesn't work that way. Grieving isn't just something you turn off to make room for someone else, and it certainly doesn't work on a convenient timeline." I could see the frustration in his face, mirroring the anger in mine. "You think I hate you for being happy with her, but it's not about that. It's about how you handled everything when Mom died, how you pushed her memory out as if it was the only way to be happy again. He was taken aback by my bluntness. Perhaps he hadn't realized how deeply his actions had hurt me, or maybe he had never considered that his path to happiness had left a trail of pain in its wake. Our conversation grew heated, voices raised enough that other patrons shot us wary glances. The air was tense as my father and I reached a fragile point in our conversation. His earlier remarks about moving on and finding new love had pushed me to a breaking point. Seeing the shock on his face when I challenged his views on grief and moving forward, he paused, looking genuinely bewildered. "How do you expect to find someone else to love you and the kids if you're still hung up on Annie?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern, but also a hint of frustration. It was a question that might have been genuine in his mind, but felt like an accusation to me. "Annie was the love of my life," I replied, my voice firm, each word laden with unyielding truth. "And yes, I'm still hung up on her because love doesn't just end when someone dies. You don't just replace someone like that." I could see him trying to process my words, his eyes searching mine for something, perhaps a sign of the son he once knew who hadn't been shattered by loss. I continued, "My children, they are my heart, Dad. They're the other loves of my life. But it's different. They depend on me not just to love them, but to provide safety, security, and a sense of normalcy in a world that was turned upside down." The cafe noises faded into the background as I leaned in slightly, needing him to really hear me. "It's my job, my duty, to give them the best life I can. That doesn't mean rushing to fill a void with a new person. It means being there for them, fully, without distractions or replacements for their mom." He was stunned, perhaps by the intensity of my conviction, or maybe by the realization that our views on handling grief and love were worlds apart. "But you need someone too," he finally muttered, almost to himself, a note of sadness creeping into his voice. "I needed my dad when I lost my mom." I shot back, the words spilling out with a mix of pain and defiance. "But instead I got a man who was too quick to move on, too quick to replace her. I won't do that to my kids. I won't let them feel as I did, secondary to someone else's happiness." We were at the end of our coffees, the dregs cold and bitter, much like the mood that had settled over our table. As my father eyed me, ready to offer another piece of his mind on how I should live my life, I cut him off. The frustration and hurt from years of bottled-up feelings were brimming over. "I need to make this clear," I began, my voice steady but filled with resolve. "I will never, ever tell my children to just get over their mom's death. I'm not going to sit them down and tell them their mom is dead and that they need to accept a new mother." The cafe, usually a backdrop of clinking cups and indistinct chatter, seemed to quieten around us. My dad watched me, his expression hardening as he prepared to defend his own actions again. But I wasn't finished. "And another thing," I continued, "I'm not going to scold them for missing her, for crying out for her at night. It's normal. They're kids and they lost their mother. How could I possibly take that grief and make it about someone else's discomfort? That's not what they need. They need a dad who understands their pain, not one who silences it." My dad shifted uncomfortably, his eyes briefly dropping to the table before meeting mine again. "You think I don't know that?" he muttered, his voice a mix of defensiveness and weariness. "I think you forgot it when it mattered." I shot back, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "You remarried so quickly, and it felt like you were trying to erase Mom from our lives. You expected me to just accept it, to be okay with all the changes because you were." I leaned forward, making sure my point was clear. "I am not looking to find them a new mother. What I am striving to do is to be the best dad I can be, given the shitty hand we've been dealt. I want to give them stability, love, and understanding, not rush to fill a perceived gap with the first person who comes along." I paused, my heart pounding with the intensity of the confession. "And I will never, ever make them feel like they are second to anyone else in my life, the way you did with me. You made it clear you loved your new wife more, and I felt like I had lost you too, not just Mom." He finally said something about regret, how he regretted that I couldn't see his perspective, that maybe one day I'd understand. But as I walked away from that cafe, I knew that understanding wasn't just about seeing his point of view. It was about recognizing the deep divides in how we processed loss. I wasn't ready to forgive his past actions just because he had found happiness. My path was different, and I needed him to respect that without judgment or pressure. As I drove home, the weight of our fractured relationship heavier than ever, I realized that some gaps might be too wide to bridge, at least for now. The last time I saw my dad at that cafe, it felt like a definitive line had been drawn. In the weeks that followed, he tried to reach out a few times, texts, a couple of voicemails. His voice always held that familiar mix of concern and awkwardness, as if he wasn't quite sure what to say or how to say it without reigniting the flames of our last argument. Each attempt at bridging the gap seemed to remind me of the wide chasm that had formed between us over the years. I wasn't ready to cross it yet, so I responded sparingly, my replies brief and non-committal, until eventually I stopped responding altogether. The silence that settled wasn't peaceful, but it was necessary. Life went on, as it does, filled with the daily routines and small crises of raising two kids alone. I threw myself into being a dad. The soccer games, school projects, bedtime stories. Every smile and tear from my kids reminded me of my promise to be the steady presence they needed. I often thought about that conversation with my dad, turning over his words in mine, questioning the harshness of my responses and the rigidness of my stance. Yet, every time I considered reaching out, I remembered the feeling of being a kid who felt second best, and I'd retreat, convinced I needed more time. Months turned into a year. The seasons changed, and so did the kids. They grew taller, their faces losing the last traces of toddlerhood. My dad's attempts to connect became a memory, almost as distant as the happier times before Mom's death. In the quiet moments late at night, when the house was still and my mind refused to rest, I pondered the cost of my steadfastness. Was holding on to my hurt worth the growing silence between us? It was a chilly evening, the kind that hinted at the approach of winter, as I climbed up to the attic to sort through some old boxes that had been gathering dust. The attic, with its musty smell and beams of moonlight sneaking through the small window, always felt like a capsule of the past, untouched and full of secrets waiting to be rediscovered. As I sifted through the boxes, my hands found an old photo album, its cover worn and slightly faded. Curiosity piqued. I sat down on an old creak chair, the album resting heavily in my lap. Flipping it open, I was greeted by vibrant pictures of my mom and dad. They were younger then, full of life and laughter, captured in moments of sheer joy. Picnics in the park, beach vacations, and quiet afternoons at home. Each photo was a portal to a time before grief had reshaped our lives, to a family that once was. My finger traced the outlines of those happier days, lingering on the images of my dad with his wide, carefree smile. It struck me then how much I missed him, not just the physical presence, but the essence of who he had been before tragedy had turned him into someone I could barely recognize, let alone understand. Seeing him so happy and unburdened in these photos made the contrast with his later years even more poignant. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, softening the hard edges of the resentment I'd held on to for so long. It wasn't just my mom I missed, but my dad as he was back then. It dawned on me how much the sorrow had changed him, how it had stolen that joyful person from the photographs and left someone else in his place. Someone consumed by his own grief, making choices I couldn't comprehend. Sitting there in the attic, surrounded by relics of my childhood, I felt the weight of years of misunderstanding and misconnections heavy on my chest. The memories of laughter and love so vivid in those photographs seemed at odds with the strained, awkward encounters that had defined our recent years. The realization was a quiet but profound turning point. Maybe there was room for reconciliation, a chance to rediscover the man from those pictures, to understand the journey he had taken from there to here. Perhaps it was time to bridge the gap that grief had widened, to approach him not just as the man who had made decisions I struggled to forgive, but as my dad, who had once been the entire world to a much younger version of me. Resolute, I closed the album, a plan forming in my mind. I would reach out to him, try to initiate a conversation not just about what went wrong, but about what had once been right. It felt like a daunting task, filled with potential for pain, but also for healing. As I descended from the attic, leaving the quiet sanctuary of the past behind, I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with newfound understanding and a hopeful heart. It made me think about how the kids would remember these years. Would they see a dad who stood his ground, or one who let old wounds dictate the future? The thought unsettled me enough to consider that perhaps it was time to try a different approach, not for my sake, but for the kids who deserve to know all facets of their family, even the complicated ones. The next morning, I drafted a message to my dad, simple yet more open than anything I'd sent in a long time. "Let's talk," it read. "When you're ready." I wasn't sure where a conversation might lead us, or whether it would heal any old hurts, but I knew it was a start, a small step toward understanding, or at least coexistence, in this new chapter of our lives. As I hit send, the silence I had grown accustomed to seemed a little less daunting, tinted with the possibility of something new. Now on to the next story. Story 9. BF of 6 years' parents always made us sleep on an air mattress despite the first come, first serve rule. After the Thanksgiving drama, he almost proposed, but everything changed by Christmas. I, 24F, and my boyfriend, Nathan, 26M, have been together for 6 years. This year, we traveled to his parents' house for Thanksgiving. For context, Nathan is one of 4 brothers: Alex, single; Jack, married to Jill; Nathan, me; and Luke, married to Millie with a nearly 2-year-old. Everyone lives out of state except Luke and Millie. Nathan and I have the longest drive at 9 hours. Here's the issue. Nathan's parents, Mary and John, have only 2 guest bedrooms. 3 couples tend to visit at a time, meaning someone has to sleep on an air mattress in between the rooms. The first year I visited, I was told they'd rotate who gets the air mattress to keep it fair. But after 3 years on it, we were told it was now first come, first serve. Nathan's job doesn't allow much holiday time, so we're almost always last to arrive and stuck on the air mattress. While annoying, we understood. It seemed logical. This year was different. Nathan and I got Monday through Thursday off and would arrive first. I talked to Mary about how we were to finally get a bedroom, and she laughed, saying, "Yep, first come, first serve." Millie, who I've grown close to, knew we were thrilled about the prospect of getting a bed this year. She even decided to come early too so we could hang out, and we planned I'd take the twin room and she'd take the queen. Here's where it gets frustrating. The day we left, I texted Mary to let her know. A few hours later, Millie texted me saying Luke had spoken with Mary, who mentioned Jack and Jill would get the queen room and Luke and Millie the twin room, leaving Nathan and me on the air mattress again. Luke called Mary out, reminding her of the first come, first serve rule, but she suddenly claimed she never said that and justified her decision because Jack and Jill would be staying an extra day. For context, Jack and Jill were arriving a day later than us, so this reasoning felt like an excuse. When we arrived, I brought up the rule again, but Mary got defensive, claimed she didn't remember ever saying it, and refused to budge. I said several sarcastic comments as I felt this was really unfair. I pointed out rules are rules until they didn't serve Jill, and that we always do it a certain way until that means Jill has to take the air mattress, and she could come up with any justification, but that doesn't make it fair. I even pointed out it's silly for us to now have to board our dogs and drive 8 hours before anyone else got here just to change the rules now. She had plenty of time to bring this up with our many conversations leading up to this. She became increasingly sassy about the situation, leaving us feeling defeated and, frankly, a little targeted for speaking up. I felt Mary unfairly changed the rules to suit Jack and Jill, and that we always stuck with the short end of the stick. Update 1, December 1st, 2024. I feel like I may have let y'all down on this one based on the advice, but here's how things went. Later Monday night, Nathan spoke to his mom, and we did get the bed for the one night before Jack and Jill arrived. Initially, it was only offered for us to move the air mattress into the queen bedroom for the night, but Nathan pointed out that we were being made to sleep on an air mattress when a bed was readily available. The next morning, Nathan had to run errands where we used to live before we moved. While he was gone, I washed the sheets and remade the bed, even though Luke and Millie told me I didn't have to wash them, just remake the bed. While everyone in the family is very clean, Mary always insists on washing the sheets between visitors, so I did it out of respect for her preferences. Millie and Luke even offered for us to take their bed. But honestly, it wasn't just about the bed. It was about the promises that were made and then retracted, despite these rules being in place for years. It was also about the gaslighting and the fact that Mary didn't tell us ahead of time, even though there were so many chances to do so. As close friends to Luke and Millie, I didn't want to put them in the position of being uncomfortable on the air mattress either. While I've never had a child myself, I know your body isn't the same afterward, especially your back. We ultimately agreed to move the air mattress into Luke and Millie's room. They had a heater and it gave us a little bit of privacy. We tried to make the most of the holidays and enjoy our time there, despite everything. Later, Mary mentioned plans to get 2 pull-out couches, one for the area between the rooms and one for the twin bedroom. While this was thoughtful, it still didn't address the issue of changing the rules to suit others. Mary has already stated that we'll have a bedroom for Christmas, but if this promise is broken again, we won't stay at their house in the future. Nathan and I have decided that if we don't get a bed for Christmas, we'll stay in a hotel. We're still planning to go because it's Luke and Millie's son's birthday. For Thanksgiving next year, if there isn't enough room, we're staying home. However, Nathan and I are currently planning on getting a house, and Luke and Millie suggested that once we do, we could host Thanksgiving there. They said they'd love to attend, which is exciting because Millie and I are both avid bakers and love cooking. Whenever Millie and I bring dishes to these gatherings, they're barely touched except by us and our partners. We're also planning to visit Luke and Millie more often. They are considering moving close to the parents, and when they host holidays in the future, we'll always have a guaranteed space at their home. To address popular questions. For info on the last post, Alex, he doesn't come for Thanksgiving. He only saves his days off for Christmas. Also, he has rarely gotten put on an air mattress, only once that I remember, and that was Luke and Millie's wedding. When all 4 brothers used to come for holidays, it was Alex and the twin editor's note. Twin bedroom, Luke, pre-marriage or girlfriend, on the air mattress in that room, Nathan and I in between rooms, and Jack and Jill and the Queen. Hotel. This house is in the middle of nowhere. Closest decent hotel is around 45 to 1 hour. The main draw of visiting is everyone except parents stay up late all evening playing board games, D&D, and drinking. We used to do a drunk gingerbread making contest. As for the distance to a hotel, that would mean missing out on hanging out, and there are no Ubers here. Also, before we moved this year, we didn't stay as many days and didn't mind staying on the air mattress 1 to 3 days due to what seemed fair to us. We also were the second closest couple and just didn't get as much time off, which always made us last. Also, we didn't get a hotel this time after the incident due to saving up for a house/wedding. We didn't have spare cash floating around. Honestly, you'll know this economy and unexpected expenses. Millie and Luke, they live within the state barely. It's not feasible for them to stay home or stay with them. Also, staying with Millie's parents isn't an option. They don't get along and interact due to their child, as Millie believes her child deserves a relationship with his grandma even if she doesn't have a great relationship with her mom. Also, there is no room. Mary. This was completely out of character for Mary. In fact, the only person everyone in the house has an issue with is John. Mary is the one who wants all of their sons home for the holidays and goes out of her way to make sure we'll all attend. Usually, Luke does believe the change was due to his dad, and their mom was made the messenger because the mom is usually a big person on fairness and mostly have had no issues other than ones John pushed her into. This was also backed up by John's reaction to hearing we stayed in the room for 1 night. Before this interaction, Mary is one of 4 people that I've stated I'd take a bullet for due to her normal kindness. Jack and Jill. Most in the house has had an issue with them previous holidays. They have thrown a fit due to us voting on where to eat, and none of us wanted to go where they chose, so they refused to eat with us. Jill is the main issue of this, and similar things happen every time. This year, Millie asked if we could play the board game in their room one night as she was on the phone with her sister playing an online game, and we didn't have much room due to the air mattress. Jill stated she wasn't willing to, and either it was in our room or they weren't playing. They are also the reason we have to board the dogs. Their dog is aggressive, and with a small child, it's not safe. However, if they aren't attending, we are allowed to bring our dogs. Chronic illness/pregnancy. For all the comments about pregnancy, Jill is not pregnant. About health reason, Millie has some chronic illness they are still trying to figure out. Jill used to be on the overweight side but has lost a significant amount in 3 years. I have insomnia. Both Millie and I have bipolar disorder and endometriosis. This is inconvenient due to my period usually hitting during the holidays. Update 2, December 25th, 2024. The update is we broke up 2 weeks before Christmas. After coming back from the holidays, we had a fight. Initially, we decided to work things out, and for a while, things seemed to be improving. He even told me he wanted to propose at Christmas, and together we picked out a ring online. But just before checking out, he sighed and said he wasn't sure about us and wanted to end things. I'll admit it was heartbreaking at the time, but honestly, it was also freeing. Looking back, I think I'd been holding on for too long to a relationship where I was giving up so much of myself just to make it work. Meanwhile, I was the only one working on us. A lot of the comments on my previous post called me a doormat, and while it stung, they weren't wrong. I've been bending over backward for him and his family for years, and this breakup was the wake-up call I needed. After everything, I moved back to Tennessee to stay with friends. And yes, I know it's quick, but I've already met someone new, a guy I really like. Some people might say it's too soon, but I think I checked out of my last relationship long before it ended. While I'm not completely healed from the damage my ex caused, I feel like I'm finally rediscovering myself and what I deserve in a relationship. This Christmas was surprisingly joyful. I spent Christmas Eve with my friends, my new boyfriend, and even got to meet his mom. On Christmas Day, he came with me to meet my family, and it was one of the best holidays I've had in years. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Husband cheated with my cousin when I was postpartum. So I spent 6 years secretly planning my exit, made him pay for my education, house, car, and surgery before leaving him. This has been my plan for 6 years. This is by far the craziest thing I've done, and I can't believe I suffered all these years staying with this man just so I can survive financially. The start of our marriage was wonderful. We had 2 babies. After the second pregnancy, he cheated on me with a very close family member. He gave me a lazy apology, and on top of that, he complained about my body. He also told me I was built like a refrigerator. Mind you, I was 4 months postpartum at the time. I secretly saw a family lawyer. To sum it up for you, I would be screwed leaving him. We only had $25,000, and that being split up is basically nothing for me. No marital properties, no car. I didn't have a job, literally nothing. I was a som. I applied for hundreds of jobs during the time and couldn't find employment anywhere. So leaving was a bad decision for me financially speaking, especially with 2 small babies. Also, alimony and child support wasn't going to be enough for me to live off of or survive with 2 babies with. So I let him believe that I forgave him, and I continued being his wife. The very first time he cheated on me, it was with my cousin. Then he cheated again. He had a one-night stand with a random girl he met on a night out. I got so mad. I cheated back on him out of anger. Of course, he never found out I cheated. At least I'm smart about it, unlike him. During the time in our marriage, I worked on getting my independence back. My husband paid for my trade school. It was a very expensive program, but he paid for everything. We moved and we bought a house with his income. He grew his money too during all this time, so he made far more money now than he did when I originally wanted to leave him. I started working recently. I have a career now. I'm so happy about that. I haven't filed for divorce yet. He has no idea of my plans. I'm excited. I finally get to leave him after 6, almost 7 years now. I can walk away with at least $200,000, and we have marital assets now, like the house and the car he also paid off for me. Now I have my education and my own career. I've been working on my weight loss. I lost 66 pounds. He paid for my tirzepatide. I had a breast reduction and a breast lift. I look amazing. I don't doubt I'll probably get remarried eventually. Everything in my life is finally set and going the right way. Update November 3rd, 2024. A lot of people here wanted an update. The last time I posted, I wanted to update you guys and tell you that I did serve him. You know what's the funny part? He was honestly shocked that this happened, as if he didn't do anything wrong. He told his parents on me because I'm really close with his parents, and he thought they could persuade me to change my mind. His parents are sweet. However, They turned on me quickly and told me off for leaving their son. They let me know what he did was unacceptable, but what I'm doing is even worse by leaving him and a family behind. My husband cursed me off after the divorce news. He also called me a gold digger and went on a rant about how women only want money and blah blah blah. He also called me a whore because I went out with my girls and boys who are my close friends, and we went to the bar and celebrated my divorce before I told my husband about this anyways. We are in the middle of a divorce now. It's a process. We both still live in the marital home until further notice, as noticed by the attorney. We will both have the 50-50 custody, most likely a rotating schedule. One of my kids is taking the divorce really hard, even though he knows what happened, and he's begging us to stay together and how he doesn't want us to get a divorce. Honestly, I did feel pretty bad after my son begged me not to divide up our family and to stay with their dad. But I know at the end of the day, I need to be selfish and put my needs above everyone else's for once in my life. My son does hate me though. He won't talk to me and spends most of his time with daddy. My other child is younger and doesn't fully understand what's going on and is just kind of brushing it off. My son just keeps saying he doesn't want divorced parents and he wants us to stay together and he doesn't want step-parents. My son is really taking it hard. He is also saying that he wants to spend most of his time with his father if I go through with the divorce, and I just told him that's not how it's going to work, and we will both spend time with him, and he keeps saying it's not fair and he doesn't want to stay with me. Now on to the next story. Story 11. My husband wanted an open marriage, but it backfired. Now I'm happier without him. My husband, Leo, 34M, and I, 30F, have been together for 7 years, married for 4 of them. We don't have any kids, and we don't intend to. 2 years ago, Leo asked me for an open marriage. I was devastated at the time. I couldn't understand why he didn't just want me. I couldn't even comprehend the idea of sharing him either. He gave me the same song and dance a lot of men give their spouses. Swore up and down that he loved me, I just wasn't fulfilling his needs, he needed more than what I could give, it was just to spice up our life, it was just sex, etc., etc. I did ask if there was someone else, he said no. To this day, I'm still not sure if I believed him, but at the time I was angry and hurt and said no. He pestered me to change my mind for a week before giving me an ultimatum: open marriage or divorce. I chose the open marriage. I just couldn't bear the thought of him leaving me at the time. We have rules. We can't bring any partners home. We have to get tested for STD every 3 months. 1 weekend out of the month must be left free for us time. Any money we spend on / with our partners must come from our personal accounts. I didn't partake in the open marriage myself for the first 3 months. Leo obviously did right away. He seemed to be gone or out late almost all the time, but he always acted so happy and loving towards me, while I felt like I was dying inside. It killed me to think he was sleeping with other women, and I felt so lonely and unattractive and not good enough. I told my sister, Katie, 26F, and a few close friends everything. Katie told me to just play his game and be part of the open marriage too. If he can sleep around, so could I. I honestly didn't have much confidence in myself at the time. I'm a bit overweight, and I've never considered myself conventionally pretty. I was afraid this would just humiliate me further. Katie and my best friend, Jessie, 30F, set up my online dating profiles for me. I got so many matches that it was overwhelming. When I told Leo, he was surprised but told me to do whatever I thought was best. Jessie 1 helped me choose my first date, and I actually had a great time. He didn't pressure me for sex and took me out to drinks and dinner. We did have sex eventually, but it was all just casual, and we didn't see each other after. A couple months of casual dating that first guy really made me feel more confident in myself, so I kept going on dates with men. A lot of them wanted to treat me, so I didn't have to spend much of my own money. Not only that, but some of the men have given me the best sex I've ever had in my life, almost like the kind of sex you read in romance novels. It's been amazing. I am currently seeing 2 different men alongside Leo. One, Mark, 38M, is more of a steady boyfriend I've been with for about 6 months, and the one, Steven, 25M, is very casual, mostly just hanging out and sex. They know about my open marriage / other relationships and are fine with it. My husband has not been so lucky. In the beginning, he definitely was. He was always out and about and didn't seem to care even when I started dating too. But now, he just complains a lot and hasn't been going out much. He whines about how he's usually the one spending money. A lot of the women he tries to be with want an emotional connection before sex. He often wants to be with younger women, but they want younger men. He's also been upset that I go out with random guys so often while he's at home alone all the time. He hasn't asked to close the marriage yet, but I feel like he will soon. He keeps saying he misses us and wants to spend more time together. He tried to initiate sex a lot more too. He wants to go on dates and go on vacations and all that stuff more and more, and he gets upset when I tell him I can't because I've already scheduled to do stuff with my partners. Mostly Mark, honestly. Honestly, I don't think I love Leo anymore. I care about him, but I just don't love him. I'm not saying I love Mark or Steven, but I honestly feel closer to Mark nowadays than I do Leo. Mark makes me feel comfortable and safe, and I love spending time with him more than my own husband. Steven is funny and sweet and really good at sex. Katie and Jesse have been wanting me to divorce for a year now, but I was afraid of hurting him and thought I still loved him. But I think my love for him died when he asked for this open marriage in the first place. Seeing him get all pissy about it now just because he's not benefiting from it is also a turnoff for me too. But I don't know if divorce is the best option. I still care about him and I still don't want to hurt him. Maybe if he finally asked to close the marriage, we can talk about it then. Point 2. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Divorce. You're happier without him. He would only want to close the marriage because he can't get laid, not that he only loves you. OP. We've just been together for so long that the idea of him not being there feels weird. Which sounds stupid since I have 2 other partners, so it's not like I'll be lonely. But Leo was a part of my life for so long that for him to not be there just doesn't feel right. But you're probably right. OP on her husband dismissing her feelings regarding the open marriage. I really do think Leo does love me in his own way. Even when he was more active in the open marriage, he still made time for me and still did a lot with / for me. But you're probably right on the divorce. Comment 2. Part of the issue is the main relationship is supposed to be the important one. So the whole 1 weekend a month for us time wasn't enough. OP. I actually did argue that in the beginning, but he insisted that he needed to keep his weekends free. He did spend a lot of time at home during the weekdays, so in his mind, that made up for it. Comment 3. What if he finds evidence of your open marriage and frames you as a cheater and then brings you to the cleaners? At this point, I wouldn't trust Leo. What you're experiencing is normal. You're used to his presence in your life, but how long are you going to live like this? OP. Jesse had the same train of thought as you and actually took screenshots of his dating profiles during the beginning of the open marriage. She also told me to save screenshots of any texts we had about the open marriage. I don't think Leo would do that, but I also didn't think he'd ever ask for an open marriage, so what do I know? Update 1. Hi everyone. I got so many comments and messages on my last post, which got deleted for some reason, that I was a bit overwhelmed. Especially when a lot of you kept saying the same thing. Divorce, divorce, divorce. But the thing is, I think a part of me still loves my husband. I know in my last post that I didn't think I loved him anymore, but I can't just forget about the things that I do love. I love when he sings in the shower. I love when he laughs so hard he snorts. I love when he kisses my forehead when I've had a bad day. I love when he holds my hand when we watch TV together. Leo has done a lot of shitty things, but he really isn't the big a-hole people think. Maybe that was my fault, but even if I do still love him, I'm not in love with him anymore. I don't think I have been for a while. I care about him, a part of me does still love him, but you all were right. I should have just divorced him when he gave me that ultimatum in the first place. This past Saturday we had the big talk. I initiated it, but he didn't seem too surprised. I just told him that I noticed he didn't seem to like me going out with Mark or Steven and asked if there was a problem. He said there was, but he didn't ask me to close the marriage. He just asked me if I still loved him. I said something like, "Not like I used to." He broke down crying, which made me cry. I guess he had known for a while that I wasn't in love anymore, but he had hoped he could win me back if he funneled all of his energy into me. I was honest and told him that during those first 3 months of our open marriage, I think my love for him died, and I just couldn't get it back. I did tell him that I still cared about him and that I did love him, but it's not the same as it was. He asked if I loved Mark or Steven, and I said no. I like being with them and I care about them a lot, but I can't say I'm in love with either of them. I also finally asked him why he wanted an open marriage in the first place. A lot of you in the comments said he already had someone lined up, and you were right. He had someone at work he was interested in, and she wanted him too. The open marriage was just to get permission. He honestly never expected me to also get my own partners because of how unconfident I was, but he didn't want to stop me either because he thought nothing would come of it. He didn't really like me seeing other men, but he knew it wouldn't have been fair to tell me no when I gave him permission first. I guess Mark and Steven made him insecure because I was spending so much time with them on a regular basis. The open marriage was just sex on the side for him. He only did hookups and they never lasted long. He genuinely always just loved me, but he thought I was falling in love with my partners and he was losing me and wanted to win me back. We cried a lot and talked a lot. We've decided to get a divorce. Since the house is in his name, I'm going to move out and live with Katie for a while. He told me I didn't have to and I could stay until the divorce was finalized. But I just can't. It's too hard to even look at him sometimes. I don't know how I feel, to be honest. I thought I would be relieved or sad. But I'm just tired. I wish I could have been like you all wanted me to be, clapping back or being sarcastic and snarky or rubbing it in his face. But I don't feel like I've won anything. I just feel lost. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I'm wondering if maybe the other woman ended it so now he was back to what he was comfortable with, his wife. He went and had his fun, and when that died out he was not left with a wife waiting for him at home. OP. He and his coworker were only sleeping together for maybe a month. She fulfilled his kinks that I never liked indulging in. That's why he was with most of his partners, because I wasn't interested in his kinks. Comment 2. He stepped out of this marriage first and tried to have his cake and eat it too. The thing with open marriages is that you can never count on how emotions will change. Sex is a very intimate action, and many people will develop emotional connections. Those connections come at a price. He placed a bet and he lost. At least he's mad enough to acknowledge it and own up to it. There is no easy answer. I wish you healing. OP, thank you. Leo just thought the open marriage would be a way for him to get all of his kinks he couldn't do with me because I wasn't into it. He knew how unconfident I was, which wasn't because of him. A lot of people seem to think that he eroded my self-esteem, but he didn't. We can thank my mother for that, but that's a whole other can of worms. So he never expected me to partake in the open marriage either. Comment 3. So he never expected me to partake in the open marriage either? So basically while he asked for a mutually open marriage, he expected it to be only his side open, and then got hurt that reality didn't meet his expectations? OP. Leo admitted that he did only expect his side to be open. He was never going to stop me from opening my side. But like I said, he didn't think I would. To be honest, I don't think I would have either if it wasn't for Jesse and Katie pushing me and making profiles for me. Update 2. Hey, it's been a while. Feels like both a lot and nothing has happened. I still have a lot of feelings, but I'm also just really tired. Leo and I are still in the middle of our divorce. It's been as amicable as a divorce can be since we mutually agreed to it and we had a prenup. It's been pretty easy splitting everything else 50-50ths. My lawyer says I should be divorced by the end of the year. Leo is insistent on giving me alimony, but I'm not really interested. Thanks to a lot of people making me think about Leo's explanation for the open marriage, I did approach him about it again and asked him to be 100% honest with me about that girl from work. He admitted there was more to it than he admitted. This is what he explained to me, and I have decided to believe him. Even if he's lying, it doesn't really matter anymore since we're getting divorced. I also just have little energy to care about the details at this point. According to him, this is the timeline. He was posting on Reddit about his kinks for advice and such, which I did know about beforehand. He was getting messages from this one user, and they just kept talking back and forth. He mentions my name to the user in a conversation, which he let me read during his lunch break. His coworker, I'll call her Mary, approaches him and asks if he uses Reddit and asks about his handle. He confirms, and then Mary tells him he's the user he's been talking to. They start talking more and more in real life as friends and eventually start talking through IG. He also showed me these conversations. The conversations were mostly just memes and jokes with occasional flirt/mentioning of kinks. At one point, she says, "It's too bad he's not single." This is when he decided to demand the open marriage because Mary was clearly into him and into the same kinks, and she could sexually satisfy him since I was unable to. That's how he basically said it anyway. Truth be told, we did have some bad difficulties before the open marriage was brought up. I'm very vanilla, and he discovered his kinks after we were married. I tried them all for him, but I just couldn't get into it, and he didn't like seeing me struggle, so he didn't try to bring them into the bedroom again after it was obvious I didn't like it. So we did have sexual compatibility issues. Maybe we were doomed to fail even without the open marriage ultimatum. Our families, outside of my sister, were shocked when we told everyone we were getting a divorce. They always thought we were so happy and in love. My mom blames me, which I expected, but it still hurts. They don't know about the open marriage, and Leo and I plan to keep it that way. I think he is ashamed to tell them. I am too, if I'm being honest. I really thought Leo was the love of my life. He was my first for almost everything. I said we were together for 7 years, but we were friends since college. I've known him for nearly 12 years, and we're about to become strangers soon. I still mourn my marriage, even though Katie and Jesse keep telling me this is for the best. They're both definitely thrilled. They don't hide it. But they also know this has been a weird time for me. I just don't know how to feel. I thought I would feel free or relieved or heartbroken or something, but I just feel weird, like I lost a part of myself and I don't know how to get it back. I'm still living with Katie, but I'll be moving out soon. I found a 1-bedroom apartment that's near Jesse, so I won't be completely alone. Mark offered to let me move in with him, but I declined. Honestly, we're kind of on standby. He knows I'm having a hard time processing my feelings about my husband and the end of my marriage. I think he wants us to be official, but I don't know. I really do like Mark, and I don't want to lose him, but I feel like I need to figure myself out first. As for Steven, we ended our relationship at the beginning of August. He got a job offer in another state and took it. Even though it was casual, I did cry a little. Steven is a great guy. Whenever he does decide to settle down into something serious, the woman who gets him will be a lucky one. We've been texting here and there, but it's mostly just sending each other TikToks and polite, "Hope you're doing well" messages. Some people asked me if I wanted to go back to monogamy even after experimenting and clearly getting into this poly relationship I had going on, and the answer is yes, I do. Even though Mark and Steven were great and I met plenty of great guys during my open marriage, I don't know if I've really been happy with myself or my choices. I also think I felt guilty a lot too, like I was somehow cheating on Leo, Mark, and Steven even though it was all consensual. Polyamory and open relationships may work for some people, but it's really just not for me. Jesse says I need to get a therapist. I have tried looking, but finding a therapist that's both available and seems like a good fit is a pain. Hopefully I can find one by the time the divorce is settled. I also want to figure out what to do about Mark on my own. I don't want to lead him on and give him false hope. Maybe we should take a break, or maybe I should tell him to just break up with me. He should find his own happiness without worrying about me. Relevant comments. Commenter, you're numb. It happens when you lose your partner and you're grieving and under a great deal of stress. I think Reddit as a whole takes divorce really lightly, but I read once that divorce is one of the most stressful life events right after death of a loved one. And I'm slightly curious, you say your family is shocked that you're divorcing because you seem so in love, but the fact that your friends are delighted you're leaving your husband tells me that they've witnessed some not-so-great relationship dynamics. OP. Katie and Jesse were the only ones I told about the open marriage, so they're glad it finally ended in divorce. None of my other friends or family members know. Commenter. I've read all of your posts and I don't know why you're still protecting your ex by not telling people what he bullied you into doing. He had the girl all picked out and wanted your approval so he could cheat. Tell the damn world. I would. You have nothing to be ashamed about. Don't let your mother put the blame on you. You need a therapist who will help you build your self-esteem. OP. I just feel embarrassed I let it get to this point, I guess. I probably should have just gone with the divorce when the ultimatum was first issued. Commenter. I'm glad you are healing. It sounds like Mark wants more than you can give him right now. Focus on healing and finding out who you are outside of this marriage. It's sad that your STBX ruined a loving marriage for kink sex. I'm glad you are divorcing. You deserve better. Definitely get therapy. It will help you navigate the next part of your life. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.